meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for our invocation. I didn't see Pastor Todd Forrest here. Is someone here from the Christian Center? Any other representative? Okay, then let's just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please, Bev.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Here.
Vice Mayor DePorter?
Here.
Councilmember Leger?
Here.
Councilmember Tolos?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Yates?
Present.
Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
Okay, thanks, Bev. It looks like our league is not here yet. League of Arizona Cities and Towns Representative Ken Strobeck. So they might show up a little bit late. So we're going to start with the presentation by the Fountain Hills Branch Manager for the Maricopa County Library District, Vicki Novak, regarding activities and events. Please.
Thank you for allowing me to present and tell you about what's happening in the library. First, I'd like to start with some of the things that have happened in our fiscal year, July 2015 through June 2016. We have 46,043 physical items in the library. We had 263,836 checkouts. And in the whole library district, we have 10,571,938 digital items that you can download. And in our summer reading program, we had 375 participants of all ages. We also offered 238 programs for youth with 3,860 in attendance. We also offered 130 programs for adults with 2,041 in attendance. We also had 1,320 volunteer hours, and we had 154,896 customer visits to the library, and we have 6,764 active card holders. One of the things you might not know about is that you can check out a telescope at the library. We have 3 telescopes that were donated by a member of the Fountain Hills Astronomy Club. You can check out a telescope for a week at a time, and they're good telescopes. You can view the rings of Saturn and the craters of the moon. And our telescope program was awarded the NACO Award by the National Association of Counties this year. And as also along with the telescopes, we have our Star Party program, where in front of the library in the Centennial Circle, you can join the Fountain Hills Astronomy Club in the library and view even higher powered telescopes. The Astronomy Club will tell you what you're looking at. And so we have one coming up on January 4th, 6 to 9 p.m. in front of the library. Some other programs that we're excited about this past summer, we had Code Club, which was for all ages, but especially focusing on kids to learn computer programming skills. It's a self-directed program where they learn computational thinking skills, and we're also going to offer that again this summer. And then coming up in January 13th, we're going to start our garden club. We're going to have a raised bed in the Fountain Hills Community Garden, And so kids and teens will be able to help us maintain our raised bed in the community garden. And also, we're excited that starting in July, we're going to have a seed library where customers can come into the library, check out seeds that they can plant, and then when they harvest their crop, they can return seeds to the library. And this is sponsored by an organization called Garden Pool. Also at the library, we have as one of our goals to help the town invest in the town's economic growth. We do have some resources that we want to promote for both job seekers and small business and potential new businesses. So some of the things that we're interested in doing that, one of the things that we have is called Reference USA, an online resource that allows business owners to research the market, competitors, and potential customers, create marketing plans, and so on. And we think not a lot of people know about this, so we want to get the word out by having displays in the library and speaking to groups of small business owners. We also have something called Gale courses. These are online 6-week courses taught by an instructor. They're free. All of this is free. Some of the courses we offer are Mastery of Business Fundamentals, Creating a Successful Business Plan, Using Social Media in Business, and Small Business Marketing on a Shoestring. And then for job seekers, we have some other things such as our Career Transitions resource, Learning Express that helps them increase their job skills, and Gale Courses also offers a lot of courses that will help with that. And then we're also, we have our winter reading program for adults coming up, January 3rd through March 3rd. You'll be able to sign up at winter.mcldaz.org. That website isn't working right now. It'll be working starting January 3rd. The theme is Read Your Way to Happiness, and it's just to encourage people to read and also to do challenges and activities related to the theme. So each week there will be a different theme, such as humor or work-life balance or creative pursuits. And if customers read or create or complete activities, they'll be entered in drawings for things like tote bags filled with mugs, bookmarks, and books. So we hope that you'll sign up also. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak and let you know what some of the things going on at the library.
Well, thank you for joining us, Vicki, and I know that this is very interesting. A lot of people don't realize how very active our library is and how much there is for the kids, and I know you try to do things, especially when the kids have breaks from school, so they have something extra to do. And on behalf of my 9-year-old grandson, I want to thank you for having the Pokemon hotspot at the library. He was there with all his friends, and they spent the entire afternoon just having a wonderful time, both inside and around the library. So.
That was a very popular program, and we do have a lot going on while the kids are on winter break.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
Any council questions for
I
whoever
just
wants to
wanted
go
to
first?
echo the mayor's comment. We're there all the time with my young kids. I think you do an excellent job of adding value to the town's rec programs that we already have for children.
Great.
Follow you on Facebook. You have movies around breaks. You have times for people to come in and work with the therapy dog that's in there occasionally. So you just do an excellent job of adding value to one of our key objectives of attracting young families and making our community be more attractive. So thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Magazine?
Thanks, Vicki. Thanks for the presentation. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that we have a Friends of the Library. And my wife Cynthia was president for 3 years, and I want to be able to go home tonight. If I don't mention that, I'll be in a lot of trouble. But honestly, they do a tremendous job in giving advice to the library, raising money for the library.
Yes.
And
We have a very supportive Friends group.
I just want to mention that.
Great.
Mayor?
Anything else? Grady?
I'd just like to add, Vicki, could you share with the council what the investment of the library district is each year? And what your budget is at this location? It's a significant investment in our community. I'm not sure people really realize that.
I'm sorry, I don't have the figure right offhand, but if you'd like, I can get that to you later.
That'd be great. I'd love to share it with the council because I've heard it, and it's. I want to say it's close to like a $2 million or $3 million investment each year, and we've got it's a perfect public partnership between basically the town. We provide the facility. Obviously, we built the facility that they're in. and we do the maintenance on the facility for the most part, but it's a very small investment that we get considering what we get back out of it. So it's a great thing that we get through the county library district, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and people can also request items from all the branches throughout the library district, which people do take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, Vicki, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks. Oh.
Okay, while we're fixing that, we'll go on to our call to the public. Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay, then we have 12 items on our consent agenda coming up. Can I get a motion to accept them as read?
Mayor, so moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor? I need roll call, sorry. Roll call, please, on that.
Vice Mayor DePorter?
Aye.
Councilmember Magazine?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Toles? Councilmember Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you. Our regular agenda item will start with consideration of appointing one citizen to serve on the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission to fill a vacated term which begins on December 15th, 2016, and ends on June 30th, 2017. I move to appoint John McHugh to the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission to fill a vacated term beginning December 15th, 2016, and ending June 30th, 2017. Okay, any council discussion? Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor,
Is
7-0.
John McHugh here with us? Oh, hi, stand up so we can say hello and thank you. We appreciate very much you volunteering for this position. You know that it's a lot of time out of your free time, and we do appreciate it. And we will go on to number 14, consideration of the design concept selection of Fire Station Number 2 relocation project. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the item before you is a request for the council to select one of 4 concepts for the new Fire Station 2 that is planned. It is a $4 million project. Most of the cost of this is being absorbed through the collection of the development impact fees that we receive for fire. And I'm going to go ahead and have Chief Ott go ahead and give some introductory remarks. We have with us tonight Hunt Caraway, who is the firm that is responsible for doing the architectural design and engineering for this project. With that, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Gonna have to hire you, Dana.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council, and thank you for my technical assistance there. The new Fire Station Number 2 is to be located on Fountain Hills Boulevard and Muskrat Lane. Was included in the FY 2016-17 Capital Improvement Plan and will provide for decreased response times within the service area and to help even out the calls for service distribution with Fire Station 1. The town retained Hunt Caraway Architects for the design of the fire station, which is approximately 9,600 square feet. It includes public meeting area, MCSO field office, kitchen, training, day room, study, exercise room, 6 dorms for fire and EMS personnel, 3 apparatus bays, and associated storage. The site will also include a shared access driveway with EPCOR. The town is committed to designing a fire station that blends in with the surrounding residential community. An open house was held in July of 2016 for the surrounding residents to review the site layout, architectural renderings, and provide any feedback. 2 homeowners in the general vicinity of the fire station attended this open house and were in general concurrence with the aesthetics of the fire station. Design has since progressed to the 30% stage, and the residents in the vicinity of the fire station were invited to a second open house in November of 2016 to review 3 concepts related to the architecture and color of the proposed fire station. 3 residents attended the open house. However, none lived in the vicinity of the fire station. The general consensus was all 3 concepts were acceptable, and it should be left up to the fire department and architect to choose the combination of architectural features that best blend in with the surrounding community while taking in consideration the cost and maintenance of the options. The presentation shows the 3 concepts presented at the November 29th, 2016 open house, as well as a 4th option combining architectural elements and colors preferred by the fire department and architect. And tonight we have our design team, Tammy Caraway, principal with Hunt Caraway, and Jonathan Smith, our lead design architect, to present the slides.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and city representatives. Thank you so much. I am Tamara Caraway, also known as Tammy. I am a principal of the firm Hunt & Caraway Architects, and I have with me Jonathan Schmid tonight, who is one of our lead architects in the firm and design architect for the project. So we so appreciate you inviting us tonight to present and to get your comments and feedback. We're happy to answer questions either during the presentation or at the end, either way. Hunt & Caraway has been in business in the state of Arizona since 1994, and we only practice in Arizona. About 99% of our work is all commercial institution type work, and by that I mean it is either focused in education or emergency services, police and fire. So we've done a number of fire stations, and we keep abreast of all the new requirements and regulations. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the station. As Chief Ott mentioned, it is located off of Fountain Hills Boulevard, north of Shea Boulevard, and the cross street adjacent to it on the right-hand side of the screen is Muskrat. So, and I don't know if we have the, which one's the pointer on this? Thank you. So Muskrat, all right, you must have magic fingers. All right, so Muskrat is over here to the right. The property is outlined in yellow, and it goes pretty far down to Shea Boulevard. So we have Epcor, the silt pond here. This sits up on a pretty significant knoll. So as you come up Fountain Hills Boulevard, that's where you rise, right off of this traffic light. And then the Epcor facility is over here to the far left. This property, all total, is about 3 acres. I'm going to walk you through the site plan just a little bit. Again, Muskrat is over here, and we are developing a shared driveway, as Chief Ott mentioned, with Epcor that will bring us access into the site, into the station. One of the first things John and I did when we looked at this property was recognizing one of the most beautiful things about the town of Fountain Hills is that you have the rolling desert. And we are always cognizant of our adjacent neighbors, the sites and the vistas that you have out here, the site views, of course the vegetation, and respecting the property, the environment, and the neighbors around you. So as we looked at this is the high part of the site. We have a very steep grade over here. We drop from where our property is down to about in here, over approximately 200 feet, we drop almost 20 feet, sorry. So looking at this, we have a neighbor that lives up here. We've got neighbors over here. So we wanted to make sure that we were very sensitive to what we were doing. So this area is actually the public, or excuse me, the entry to the building. We have the public entry area, and John's going to go through the particular site floor plan here in a little bit with you. We have the living quarters, so that's where the kitchen, dining, day room areas are, and then we have the residential sleeping quarters here. the main bays coming through here, and then the main support areas. One of the questions that came up during the community meetings, which are concerns that we hear at every time we design a fire station, are always noise, light, and what the activities surrounding the fire station are. So I'm going to back up just a bit. So one of the things that we always do is to make sure that we have private areas for the firefighters, that we have areas where the trucks will enter here, come around, and in through the bays, and then exit, so we have safe exit ways out onto the main streets. We have, if trucks are, if trucks are returning and need to be parked outside for a few minutes, this is the area where they do that. So we've been very respectful of the site views at from the property owners that are up overhead. And then having the public entrance directly off of the main road, so that people, when they arrive at the fire station, they can see where they're going and how to get help if they need it.
So Tammy, could you just trace where the truck comes in and how it goes around?
Yes. So the truck would enter either from this direction or from this direction, come in and park in here. And then on exit for an emergency call, they would come out and then either make a right turn or make their left turn. Patio areas for the firefighters are here. We've got trash enclosure. We have an emergency generator. We have one of the things to help mark the entry is a flagpole. And then these long dark lines are retaining walls because we do have a significant drop off here into the wash area. As I mentioned, some of the things that are always a concern with homeowners are the fact of lights. So sirens, lights, things like that. So this drawing, it's dark because this would be a nighttime, this would be an evening, nighttime look at the fire station. So all of the lighting here is in compliance with dark sky to minimize light pollution and drifting, light bleed off from the site. It also, we've used like 3-foot high bollards or wall mounts where we need light right at the building itself. So we've tried to be very minimalistic with our lighting, yet provide the safety and security necessary. All right, I'm going to let John walk you through the floor plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the current floor plan for the new fire station. Kind of starting from the very top of that station is the public entry spot. We have a MCSO office, reception area, and then a community room with a public restroom. And then from there, we have a security door, and we have a study room, we have a hallway, and then a captain's office. And then from there, we go into a more living area of the firefighters. So we have the kitchen area, the day room, the fitness area, dorms along the side with restrooms and laundry. And then we have the actual 3 apparatus bays with support facilities. When we were doing this is the initial concept that we came up with, and then from that we created some additional concepts. So this is the initial renderings that we created for that first concept. So again, this is the front entry of the building. This is kind of the view as you drive by on Fountain Hills Boulevard. This is the back view of that station. Again, trying to be very respectful to the neighbors and residences. So this really feels like a house more than it does a fire station. And then this is actually the public entry area, and they would actually be coming in through this entry portal on that side. So it's a very subdued architecture, something that really feels like a house or residence, but still a public building. So in that, we created 3 concepts initially, and then we created the 4th concept to kind of round out some of the options that we saw that everyone liked. And so this is the first concept that we came up with. this is the second concept.
Mayor?
Councilman Magazine?
I'm sorry, if I may, as you go through this, would you indicate if there were any real differences other than I noticed the color palettes are different on the outside? Any other exterior changes or interior changes?
Some of them have different types of roof materials that we're using. Some of them have different either stone veneers or tile veneers. Some of the concepts we have, for example, in this one, we have different gables in the roof with wood veneers versus some different porticos and things like that we have here with some different roof options. So there were some minor changes, but really trying to create the aesthetics that links a lot of different houses here in Fountain Hills.
And interiors are all the same?
Interiors are all the same. And then our final concept, which is concept number 4, was a blending of the different views that people said that they liked and wanted to include. So, that's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, Chief, which is your preference?
Well,
Don't ask that.
Well, they gotta live there.
we kind of like number 4.
Number 4, okay. So without the glass doors, without the trusses,
Right,
sticking
and the-
exposed.
More of the solid door. Again, it's kind of a long-term maintenance item. The open solid doors are kind of nice, but again, it trying to blend in and make it look like it's more of a residential type structure, going with the solid doors with the vision panels in them is a little bit more of a preference. They're a little less expensive as well. But we kind of like the roof line, the stone accents. I'm not allowed to pick colors at home, so I don't pick colors at work either, so that was input from other people. But the Council Member Magazine, you'd ask about the interiors, and with the site limitations, even though it looks like a rather large site, we do have some retaining wall and flood considerations. The footprint and the drop in the elevation kind of had us pick one of the best layouts that would work for us to be able to combine everything and keep the residential, more quiet side back towards the closest neighbors. So that's, we like number 4.
And they all pretty much cost the same, doesn't matter which elevation?
It's all within the allowances for the exterior design, so I don't think there's anything, again, we don't want, we're not looking for the highest dollar thing, we're looking for the most sustainable, the best blend for that area, so.
Questions? Councilman Yates?
Thank you. I agree with you, no glass doors, especially on those big giant doors. More a question for the architect. It's probably based on the topography, but why did you go with a 2-building concept instead of a larger main building that you might have been able to kind of section off?
Yeah, could you come up to the mic?
Go ahead,
Oh,
brother.
okay.
With the slope and the topography there,
Yeah.
it comes down, and there's actually about a foot difference between
The top building and the
almost a
bottom
foot and a
building?
half from the
Okay.
top side to the bottom side. So, when we come down to here, this actually slopes coming down, and we're lower here. Again, that kind of helps to keep the roof lines so that they're not obtrusive and kind of more on the same plane. But this is lower than what this side is.
Excellent. And Madam Mayor, as a follow-up, are there any other value engineering options other than the aesthetics on the outside that when we do go to the bidding stage of this, that we might be able to capture?
We're just at the 30% design stage now. We've had, we actually have a permit pulled. We had the 30% drawings submitted. We did an initial plan review on that. We're getting to the point now where we can really get into those value engineering type items now that we've got the items set and look at things like furnishings and HVAC options, and again, kind of going down value engineering, the glass doors out for the solid doors, and those kind of options. So we're heading in that direction. We're really kind of hoping to get to having bid documents somewhere around probably February or March. Prior to that, we'll be in that value engineering stage so that we can actually have those items ready, be down to the best options for the price and also the long term, because I'm sure you're aware that just because something's less expensive in the beginning doesn't mean that for the life of this building. I don't plan on being here to work out of that building in 50 years, but I still kind of hope to be around a little bit, if in nothing else in legacy, but want a building that's still sustainable through there and is not just a money pit as we go forward, so.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, let me go to Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Chief. I look at this as from a practical standpoint, and I'm disappointed that we've got 4 concepts that all look the same. I am a builder, and I hang houses on sides of hills all the time, and I'm truly disappointed that we have 2 separate buildings, one of which, the back building looks like a 2-story building, which means that we're going to be heating and cooling twice as much air just to keep the building cool. I mean, the look is great. I mean, the art to it is very nice, but I don't think it's very practical. I personally don't like to think about all of the wooden elements that you've got on the outside of each one of the structures because of the high maintenance item over the years. I mean, wood in Arizona, as everybody knows, is not the best element, the best product to put outside. If we go back to the back building, we have a full freestanding structure with exterior walls, 4 sides. It's too bad that we can't eliminate some of the amount of exterior walls, because that's where we do our heat and loss and gain. That's where we have to, it's more expensive to construct. You know, I'm just a little disappointed that we're looking at the exact same feature all the way through. The sleeping quarters with the gabled roofs that all tie together in the middle. It doesn't rain very often in Arizona, but the interior gutter systems that's required for this type of a structure are, well, there are 2 types of buildings like this, the ones that now leak and the ones that are going to leak. And it's a fairly high maintenance item, and I think that we really, as a council and as the town, we need to look at this, because 50 years down the road, it's a maintenance item. As far as the doors, I totally agree with more solid door and less glass, but the disappointment is that we're looking at 4 concepts, that we've changed the color, we've changed a little bit of the roof detail, but we haven't changed the concept of the drawings. I'm sorry, I don't want to hear that the topography is so bad that we can't figure this out, because we can bury part of it, we can raise part of it. I mean, there are so many things that we could do to incorporate these 2 buildings into one very nice building and eliminate the exterior walls, eliminate the high maintenance items, and still have an extremely attractive product. Now, that's the practical side of it, and I thank you for your time.
Vice Mayor?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Brown, one thing, it's got a wood look, but what we were talking about in the design, our design meetings, was that it would be either a composite or metal type wood look thing, which would not create the maintenance of the wood. And in some of the function of this taller space here would also be to house some of the mechanical equipment, so that it wasn't exposed to the neighbors up above us. So.
That's all good. I'd like to see it. You know, what we have is a floor plan for a 2-story building, 2-story structure, that when you look at the floor plan, it appears that we have a kitchen and a dining room and a fitness room. If we're going to make that a single-story element with mechanical above, I'd like to see that. That's all I'm saying. And there's other ways to do that as well, and I understand the thought pattern behind that. Where are you going to put the mechanical in the dormitory areas and in the apparatus? Are they on the south side of the building, in the enclosures? I would guess so.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Brown, some of that equipment would again come back into the up above the bay area in that space for that. Some of the equipment that would be on the south end would be the breathing air compressors and that type of equipment that really needs to be enclosed and in that space. So,
Okay. Chief, I'm not being critical of what you've done. Please don't take it that way.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Brown, I have thick skin and I don't.
Okay, well, good.
We are here for your opinion, and we'd like to move forward with the project, but you have you're as much stakeholders in it as we are. We may live in the building, but you represent the town, and we want to do what's right for everybody, so.
I just, if anything that we can eliminate as far as maintenance, and minimize it and keep an attractive building, that would be my goal.
We agree, and that is our overall goal.
Jonathan, can you maybe address some of these and maybe some changes that could be made or some other ideas that?
Sure. We actually had a concept where we did eliminate that multi-pitched roof, where we actually had a parapet over the top of the dorm areas, because we did recognize that it is a hard area to come across. Those roofs don't come together in this concept. They actually are separated. So it gives the perception that it's that way, but it doesn't actually do that. And then that secondary story is actually deceptively tall because it's actually raised more than the apparatus base. And so the element is actually not as tall as it appears, and we are using it as a mechanical run. So because of the topography, because we're dropping 20 feet across that, I actually have a 6-foot retaining wall on the right side. I'm coming across to that building, and then I'm dropping another 2 feet, and then I'm dropping further on to do that. So what kind of looks like to get to that, I'm actually taller on one side and dropping everything back down on the other side. So it's not as tall as it appears, just because I'm sitting next to the apparatus space. And then for the apparatus bay mechanical, we typically don't do AC systems for apparatus bays, so it's a big savings to the town, because we usually do either evapped or just do evac. So we just basically exhaust the systems. So we save a lot of money just the fact that we're not cooling half of the facility. So really, it's only the living areas and office spaces that get cooling.
You have any other questions for him you want to?
Yeah, it is a single building, so it is all connected. And we did try to do some of those overhangs around the outside edges, because I realized like having lots amount of exterior building, it creates a crazy envelope. So what we try to do is do those overhangs to help shade the building so that at least it saves an energy through passive ways.
John, tell me one more time now on that two-story element that I'm looking at it and it's really not as tall as it looks like.
Yes.
Then why are we looking at a rendering that looks taller than it is?
Because it's the way the rendering, the ground warps up. So this is actually higher here than it is over here.
I understand.
So we're looking, the way this rendering is, it's kind of hard because it's looking down at the building, and this is actually 2 foot lower than this building is, this element is.
Got it.
Okay.
No other questions.
Councilman Tolis?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a fantastic project. I think that this is going to be a perfect spot for it. I have a couple of comments, and I would never want to disagree with the chief. I think you and your crew, you need to, I'm sure you had input from your whole crew as to which design and they're going to be spending the majority of the time at. But would you look at two things? One, I'm curious what the signage on Fountain Hills Boulevard will be, and I don't know whether we have any drawings for that right now or not, but I think it's important that when people are driving through, that they know this is a firehouse. And I was kind of leaning toward the red door because that would be clearly indicative of a firehouse. And if somebody had an emergency, they're going to be running in there. But also look at, I want to question you on the ingress here. Look at the preliminary lighting plan. Why has it been thought out that the exit is here for a straight shot for these fire trucks. And I only say that because this, to me, looks like, and maybe it's deceiving, but it looks like it's a pretty big cut to come up here, then come back, and if you're going down Shea, every second counts when you have an emergency. So I'm just curious whether that was looked at and whether the topography causes you not to be able to do that, whether it was a cost issue.
Good
What's
question.
the situation with that?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. To answer that question, the facility had an entry point here. The grade drops off pretty significantly, so I have about 20-foot drop, and so does this roadway. So at this point, where the fire trucks exit, we're about 6 feet above what the roadway is, and so the fire trucks would actually tail end and drag their tail as they come through. So that's the reason why we moved it back around to a more level spot, so that we can get out without having the back end of the fire truck tail drag. And we actually did look at the median cut too. So you can see here, we've modified this entry, the median here, and we've also modified it here to pull everything back so that everyone can get access to, and the fire truck can get both left and right exit out of that facility.
And then, if I may, as part of this project too, did Muskrat also get straightened out as well? Because the intersection on the residential side,
Yes.
It was not really in alignment with across the street.
Yes, it was. Yeah, you're correct.
And follow up on that, thank you. How about the lighting and what's going to be required for that intersection there when you have an emergency situation? I'm assuming that there's lighting that goes in, overhead lighting, that whole area, and that's not part of this plan yet, right?
Yes, there was I believe, a master plan of Fountain Hills Boulevard to be modified, and in that master plan, there was going to be some opticoms and also some signal lights at that entry point. So we are going to put that in as part of this contract to include those connection points so that they can add those systems in later.
Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Magazine?
Councilman Brown has expertise that I don't think the rest of us have, and he's helped us before on construction projects, and I'm just wondering whether or not it wouldn't be wise to ask him to meet with the architects and the chief without making wholesale changes, but maybe there are some modifications that he might want to recommend that we consider, and then come back to council to hear about those modifications and to make a decision.
Councilman Brown, would you be willing to do that?
I was actually out of anything to do, so I would love to.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Magazine, one of the things that we spent a lot of time on was developing the floor plan itself, because functionally it works well for us. It works well for us internally. It works well for our community interface. We also have a little bit of community space. I don't want to take anything away from Captain Letourneau. It keeps getting referred to as MCSO office. It's actually a public safety office, so if MCSO needed it or DPS needed it for whatever paperwork, any kind of function that they needed, that space is there. But the overall space, we spent a lot of time on developing that floor plan to get the flow to work through there. And some of that was probably our direction to the architects on this works for us on this site. So when it came down to the options, really we were more directing them towards the aesthetic view of the station opposed to the functionality. So that's part of why we were kind of set on the 3-bay configurations. We need the 3 bays so that we can house our reserve apparatus in there, keep it out of the space, as well as being able to function out of there with the everyday response vehicles. So we felt like the design, and in looking at other stations and having I don't want to make retired Chief Roberts seem old, but having his wisdom from being in a lot of other fire stations, as well as the combined experience with the rest of the people that kind of looked at the designs and looking at other recently designed fire stations, we feel that this kind of fits in well with the neighborhood, fits in well for our needs, and is functional, as well as, I must say, beautiful. But But we're always open for any input, and I would love to sit down with Councilman Brown and look at what we've got and kind of get us moving forward. At this point, we would be looking at, if we're staying on schedule, we would be looking for it going out to bid probably February, March, looking at maybe getting started in May, June, which would put us in probably the first quarter of 2018 to actually be first calendar quarter of 2018 to be in the station itself. So again, it kind of helps us, reduces our response times to the western area of town, as well as distributes the workload. So
Okay,
we appreciate your consideration.
thanks. Let's see if we have any speaker cards. No, we don't. Okay. So what we're looking for is a motion to consideration of just the design concept. So considering what we've been discussing, I guess we could get a motion to consider the design concept with possible changes as.
Madam Mayor, I would rather move to table it, and let's go ahead and do
Is that
that,
going
because
to-
if they do go with a single building concept, that may change a lot of the aesthetics. I know on the cost side, I'm the evil developer who just wants to save costs. But to Councilman Brown's point, if it's topographically challenged, and that's why you have to go to a two-building, I'm all ears.
Okay, well, if we
But I just think we should just-
anticipating some drastic changes like that, then, okay, then, all right, so is that a motion table?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move to table this.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Chief,
None opposed.
I will make myself available. I mean, just all you need to do is let me know when and where. I'd rather not do it tonight.
I was thinking the All-American at 9:30 would be perfect.
I can handle that, but I seriously, Friday, Saturday, whatever needs, you're on an extremely aggressive schedule. I mean, it's extremely aggressive.
We're slightly behind schedule, but we're still within the contract
Well,
timeframes.
Okay, but your schedule's very aggressive, and I don't want to delay that, but I would like the opportunity to look at what you're doing on a topo and watch it come out of the ground on paper, if I could.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Brown, thank you, and we'll see what we can work out and make it happen.
Mayor and council, I'd like to suggest that we try to have this ready to come back by the second meeting in January.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, well, we thank you, Councilman Brown, for stepping up once again. Whenever you suggest something, you give yourself another job.
It's okay. Okay.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you. Tammy and Jonathan,
Thank you.
okay? All right, now we go on to number 15, discussion with possible direction to the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission relating to the draft 2016 strategic plan, including suggested changes prior to its final adoption at a future council meeting. Grady?
Yes, before you tonight is a request for possible direction to the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission regarding its draft 2016-2020 strategic plan. With us tonight is Dana Sarr, the chair of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, who has a presentation, and he will provide some of the background leading up to where we are and how we got here tonight.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, thank you for giving me the rest of the evening to talk. And I apologize because I won't. I'll let you go home early, hopefully.
Hey, just because we know you, come on.
And I do want to leave some time for questions because I'm hoping that you have some input for us as we take this to the next step. But where we're at tonight is a draft of the 2016 to 2020 strategic plan. It's been in place now for a good number of years, has been modified. This is probably one of the most comprehensive changes in processes that we've gone through. Just to talk about the vision of this whole process, Fountain Hills will be a distinctive community designed to ensure long-term economic sustainability and anchor its vitality with an active and vibrant town core that serves to invigorate a cultural, social, and economic quality of life. Obviously, quality of life is a big part of what we're trying to accomplish with this plan. If you look at what's the mission of what we do as a town or as HOA or anything else that involves properties, we want to make sure that we enhance and maintain property values when this is all done. Obviously, quality of life is a major factor in that process. Looking at the values that have been established for years, and we did not spend a lot of time changing these, we want to preserve the health, well-being, and safety of all of our residents and visitors. We want to champion the diversity of experiences with residents, bring to our community, and rely on this depth of experience to innovatively address our challenges and continually improve our community. We want to take responsibility for our town's success by building partnerships and investing in our talent and resources. We want to steward this unique enclave dedicated to preserving the environment and visual aesthetic and to living in balance with the Sonoran Desert. And finally, we want to encourage a stronger community that will meet the needs of a growing, balanced demographic. Those are important. Those are the values that we maintained throughout the conversation over the last 2 years. So where are we now was the first step. We did that back a couple of years ago. It seems like a long time. Maybe it's been less than that, but we'll go with that. Then we went through the process of what do we want to be. And Vision Fountain Hills took a huge partner in that process. We not only did a survey that attracted over 2,000 responses, but we also held a one-day workshop where 100 or so people attended the entire day and gave us some very valuable feedback. How did we get there is where we are today. This plan hopefully will tell us and tell you as a council where the community wants us or how they want us to get to where they want to go. 2 people I mentioned already, the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission. I know there are several here. I want to introduce them to you. So if you're on the commission, this is your opportunity to stand up. So please do so. We have a new member. Go ahead. You're now a member officially. So you can...
Yeah.
And more important, just as importantly, the Vision Fountain Hills team, which is huge. But I want them to stand as well. Anybody that was involved in Vision Fountain Hills.
Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
And I could spend hours telling you how many hours we spent over the last couple of years with discussions and everything we've done with meeting with you, meeting with staff, meeting with the entire community as much as we can, both residents and visitors, to make sure that we've got their vision in mind in this plan. We ended up with 5 strategic objectives. They were part of the 7 that were in the existing plan. We combined a couple of those to bring us down to these 5. Economic development, the town infrastructure, attracting families and working professionals, financial stability and sustainability, and community and quality of life. These are the driving outcomes that we've built on since day one. We have 2 elements to each of those. Most importantly are the action items. There are 24 in total. These items are specific tasks that the town needs to take, in our recommendation, in order to meet the strategic outcomes. We also have 22 strategic outcomes themselves. Those are not as important. They can change as time goes on. Staff has been working with us to make sure that we've got data that backs up these outcomes. They came from the community in lots of different ways. We tried our best to bring it down to 22 that makes sense, that we can measure. Measurability was an important factor in all of our planning. We want to make sure that we just didn't put a wish list out there that had no ability to measure us to their success. So we feel that each of these 24 action items will produce the outcomes that the community is looking for. So let's talk about action items in the first outcome, economic development. First is develop a Fountain Hills brand, vision, and marketing plan. We know that some of these are already underway. Some of these might already be almost completed, but we want to make sure that they are part of the plan. Second is to develop a local business resource package. That's well underway. Scott has been putting this together for a couple of years now, but it's an ongoing effort as things change. Develop a business accelerator program. That came from a group of citizens that feel that there's a need all over the county for accelerating programs, and there's a number of different kinds of these. I'm on the community college board. We have a couple of them ourselves. ASU has some, and several cities and towns in the county itself have these. But it is a great way to develop business. Next is to rezone undeveloped commercial property to residential where feasible. You know, that was done years ago. We still have a lot of empty buildings for retail purposes. And we want to make sure that they're not sitting there empty forever. If there's an ability to rezone, to make those properties more valuable to the town and the community they serve, then it's something that should be looked at. And finally, to expand local destination events. We have the two fairs, and numerous things. You know, I'm a pickleball geek, so I think that's one of the areas that we can expand activities on. We can bring pickleball tournaments, but I can say the same thing to disc golf, biking, and all kinds of recreational activities, as well as arts and crafts and others that the community seems to think we can even do more. So that is the economic development. Here's the results. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those because they can change more to give you an idea of what we're going to look at and what could be used to determine success in some of these areas. The second one is the town infrastructure, and the action items are to develop and implement an investment plan to bring streets, buildings, and parks up to established standards. And Dennis would know there are standards in how to maintain a building. You might know that too, but you know, you might not, so we're going to give it to you. We do have those, obviously, and we want to make sure that the life cycle costs of our buildings are as low as possible, that when we do make investment in our buildings, streets, and parks, that life cycle costing is taken into consideration so that the long-term cost of that facility is what we're looking at, not the initial expense. To commission a study to identify the gap between actual and subdivision ordinance specifications and determine the costs of meeting ordinance specifications. We have an ordinance called the subdivision ordinance that defines roads, streets, sidewalks, and numerous other elements that in some cases we conform to, and in many, many other cases they don't. We have a lot of dead-end sidewalks, for example, or pedestrian walkways. If we're going to attract the young families and quite frankly, those on the other end of the scale like myself, those are important. We need safe pedestrian walkways to really draw and compete with some of the surrounding areas. We also think we need to rezone unplatted land for greater density and affordable family homes. Now, we're not talking about subsidized housing or low-income housing. We know that that's not the place for it here. But we do have several parcels, especially the two sections north of town, that now are sitting without any plat or any development process. We need to look at that to see if we can't get greater density. We know that when the town was first established and I moved here, we were looking at about 60 to 65,000 people. Now we're looking at somewhere around 30. So we're suffering from the ability to take quantity of scale in a lot of our maintenance and operations. And finally, provide environmental infrastructures like car charging stations. Obviously, we may be ahead of our time in that to some degree, but the future says that what we travel on is going to change. I spent a day at Palo Verde this week, and that came up. What would happen if everybody drove an electric car? They could nowhere come close to handling the power necessary electrical-wise, but that doesn't mean that in the time that this would probably happen that those power sources would be in place. So looking at that down the road is something I think we need to look at as well. Again, the results here are there to take a look at. When the final document is completed, we may do a huge rewrite of these based on the actual data that we can collect. The third one is to attract families and working professionals. As a summary to this, it came up a long time that the average age in Fountain Hills has steadily increased. I keep saying that when I moved here, I was the average age, and I still am. But that is not necessarily a bad thing, but those people that moved, especially at the time I was here, wanted this to be a balanced demographic with families, retired people, and also winter visitors. So these action items are to work with the state land to increase residential density, and some of these overlap with the other ones, as you can guess already. We want to collaborate with businesses in promoting a marketing plan. We know that we're working on that, but we feel that's very important. Expand social media and online messages. If I've learned anything during this campaign and working with some of the millennials, they got it down. We just see an enormous future for social media when it comes to marketing and advertising, and those of us that barely know how to operate a phone have got a lot to learn in how important that is to this new generation coming up. We want to include family branding in the marketing plan. We want to organize a young professional group. We've already started, in fact, we just completed the first class of our leadership group. Tolis is congratulations on that graduation. But a young professional group is something that other towns and cities have that really help recruit, that they also are a good sounding board to the council to find out the needs of our professionals here in town, both the ones that operate in the town and those that commute to the valley. Organize special youth camps, robotics, coding, arts, again, trying to make it more amenable to young families. We do an awful lot for young families. I don't ever want you to think otherwise. As it was mentioned, Mr. DePorter and the mayor mentioned the library, but you could go on and on. You know, the music in the park that's been added. A lot of that is coming from volunteer organizations, but it adds to the quality of life for all families, not just the youth. And again, supporting the youth club sports. We have a school district that's well known for their athletic activities, and we have a town department that really helps promote activities for youth, keeping them in a lot better shape than those of us that are older. Again, the results here, again, are potentially possible to see if we're making progress in these areas. Fourth, financial stability and sustainability. This obviously is a key factor. We want to adequately fund all identified reserve funds. There's lots of benefits to that. Obviously, our bonding rates are affected by that. We also want to make sure that the needs that come up unplanned are covered. If the fountain head fell apart out in the middle of the lake, we want to make sure that we can fix it with reserve funds that may be available for that purpose. We want to increase revenues to meet community needs, including projected operating shortfalls. We've listened to the presentations in the last year that show us that if we're going to maintain our infrastructure, for example, that we can't do it with existing revenues. So we need to keep our eyes open for all potential in that regard. And finally, we want to identify the revenue options. I'm sure you all realize that there are state laws and constitutional items that kind of prevent us from doing everything we'd like to do. We have to live within those. So we've said simply that we need to identify revenue options if we're going to make what this plan has as an end actually be workable and come to fruition. These results, same thing. We've come up with a number of them. I'm not going to try and spend a lot of time on these. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer how we got those. Finally, the community and quality of life. This is kind of I won't say a catch-all, but something that was added and people go back to it almost continually. We want to explore the selling and leasing of unused properties, not just those owned privately, but also those owned publicly. Most identifiably are the school district 3 parcels that have yet to be platted. They've been zoned. We want to make sure that we get the most out of those properties when it comes to the public side of things. We want to increase community efforts to lobby for municipal issues. I know that the town and the board commission do that. The council members is part of your job description, is to spend a lot of time with our elected officials to make sure that the needs of the community are met legislatively. We want to include local school strength in the marketing plan. We know that we have an outstanding school district, and they have done a lot of work in the last 6 to 12 months in their marketing as well to really show the world that we do have a top-ranked school system here in Fountain Hills. We want to utilize effective volunteers' skills and talents. So we're not saying that we want to replace staff with volunteers by any means, but we want to make sure, as we already do, we continue to use our volunteer efforts to where we can use them effectively. And finally, we want to work with the Fountain Hills Unified School District to maximize their property values. As I mentioned, they do own 3 parcels, plus the 4th parcel that is currently under discussion for a school for the East Valley Institute of Technology. That's moving along effectively, but we want to make sure that we keep those values up. It is owned by us. So just as this building and the property it sits on are important to the town, there are numerous areas in town that are owned publicly, and we need to make sure that those values are maintained as well. Again, the results. So we're looking for council approval, not tonight. We know that we can't do it. If we were, we'd be here till midnight, and Dennis would have to go to that meeting in the morning. But we do want to get your input on this, whether it's tonight or down the road. Grady and I spoke that we might have a workshop with just one item on the workshop agenda sometime in early February to really finalize the actual document itself. And then it has to be implemented. I mean, this is a plan, and we've had plans in the past that were really hard to implement because they were kind of a wish list more than they were identifiable outcomes involved with them. When that plan is accepted by the council, the SPAC's role changes from one of developing the recommendation to monitoring and modifying the plan itself, to making sure that the plan is always on your minds when it comes to making decisions about the future of Fountain Hills. And finally, we want to keep the community involved. Vision Fountain Hills is as alive now as it was 6 months ago. We want to make sure that they are always involved. It is the community, and we appreciate the active membership in this organization that just continues. Very important to everybody. So monitoring this is the next step, and it's something that hadn't been done in previous plans to the degree that we want to do them now. And this diagram is something that we feel that we need to work with. Those of you that are involved in construction know a Gantt chart. This is off Wikipedia, so don't think this is anything other than that. But it does, that does become the plan at some point. It lists all the activities. There's 24 of them that we've identified. Each of those 24 are oftentimes require a predecessor. In order to get some of those done, something else has to happen. And the timing of this, we want to be done by 2020 with a good portion of this plan. So that is something we're working on. I think staff, the commission and the council can come together on a reasonable plan. We know that things change, but the nice thing about technology, when something does change, it doesn't require doing the whole thing over again. You can actually make a change and let technology take care of that for us. Finally, we got action items, and they lead to results. That's the whole purpose of this plan. We're going to make sure that what the community wants, the community gets, if at all possible. So it's something that we're keeping our hands on and will, as time goes on, with the commission and with the community. Finally, back to the vision. We want to be a distinctive community designed to ensure long-term economic stability and anchor its vitality with an active and vibrant town core that serves to invigorate the culture, social, and economic quality of life here in Fountain Hills. So with that, I will stop talking.
Wow.
And give the council a chance to ask questions. Be happy to answer as many as I can.
Not a question, but just want to say that we gave you a monumental task, and you did a tremendous job with it. This is, there's a lot more work to be done, as you said, and but this is just, on behalf of everybody, thank you for. I know this took a lot of time, and you're still not finished, but thank you for all of this. Okay, now We open this up to questions. Councilman Brown?
This is way too much information to even dive into tonight, and I have to agree with the town manager that I would prefer to have just this on a work study agenda and be able to go through it very carefully, so I and we understand it, and we can move it forward.
Thank you.
So with that, I would make a motion to move this to a work study session.
Okay. Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Dory
Let's go to-
Woodrick?
Dory?
It's kind of tough following Dan.
Yeah.
It is not tough staying to a shorter agenda than his, but. Mayor Kavanaugh and Council, my name is Dory Wittrig. I am the co-chair of Vision Fountain Hills, the co-chair of the Leadership Academy that we just created. And some would say I own a real estate company, although I think it owns me, so. Vision Fountain Hills is honored to have played a role in the formulation of this year's strategic plan. Starting with a community survey that netted over 2,000 responders from our community, then the clear messages that were garnered at the May 7th community workshop, and finally, with the work groups and volunteers from our committees that worked alongside the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission. We are pleased that Vision Fountain Hills' effort has become known as the largest expression of community input for any process of this kind, and we are here tonight to speak for the literally thousands of Fountain Hills residents who have shared their opinions with us about their priorities and desires for the community. Fountain Hills is one of the most beautiful, dynamic communities of its size in the country. We see this every day in the natural beauty that surrounds us, the quality of life afforded us by our parks, our public spaces, our businesses, our involved citizenry. Our kids are bright, and they have a great future to look forward to because of a dynamic school district that becomes more dynamic each day. Yet, all of those elements of our community are in peril and can easily begin to degrade because of funding issues. We support the message that SPAC has delivered to you. It is our hope that the Council will quickly and decisively support the 24 action items that essentially came out of the Vision Fountain Hills process and SPAC's filtering of it. But we want to make it especially clear that the action items relative to financial stability and sustainability are the most urgently crucial if we are to continue to enjoy the quality of life that is so abundant in our community, let alone keep up with trends and future opportunities that can make our community even more vibrant and dynamic. We feel it is imperative that we stress that the number one priority of every Fountain Hills resident, whether they sit in the capacity of one of our elected officials, whether they're an employee of our town government, whether they own a business, a home, or perhaps even rent a property in our community, should be to support the council in its attempt to solve the erratic funding issues that continue to put our economic future at peril. We have roads, public buildings, and community spaces that are aging faster than we can afford to repair them. There is no reserve being set aside for those items to continue enjoying them in the future. The cost to protect and serve our community continue to rise, which is no surprise. That's what happens. Yet the real surprise is that our funding mechanisms will soon be grossly outmatched to continue paying for those public services. The work that the council has before it is not easy, and there will be times that you may have to solve tough issues with tough answers. Yet it's important at this juncture to say that during the vision process, we took a lot of time to present the facts of the community situation to the participants. It was an interesting process. Many of you were there that day, especially for those of us like yourselves who were kind of viewing, just sort of hovering, helicoptering, and watching the hard work that the people of the community were undertaking. After assessing all of the information that was provided to them, after asking questions of you town government officials and others in the room, and after debating and looking at alternatives, they came to the conclusion that solving these issues was crucial, and that the solutions were far less scary when the facts of the issues were better understood. Vision Fountain Hills continues to stand ready to help with that community information process and look forward to the opportunity in the very near future, we hope, to work with the town to do so. Then all of us, including yourselves, can know that our efforts were not in vain and that we left our community truly a better place by our actions with a bright and sustainable future. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Dory.
Mayor.
Councilman Magazine?
Yeah, I know you want to move this along, but I do have a couple of quick comments and then a question for our town manager. First of all, I want to thank everybody. Councilman DePorter and I were members of SPAC and were deeply involved in putting together the 2010 plan. And so we really have an understanding as to how much work went into this and how difficult it is and how time-consuming it was. In the 2010 plan, we too said financial sustainability was a top priority. That was 2010. We have done nothing to try to solve that problem. The hole is getting deeper and deeper. We beat our chests about it. We say, woe is me, and absolutely nothing has been done. And I'd just like to ask Grady if he has any thoughts about a process going forward where we might address what is, to me, the #1 priority for this town. It has been for a number of years, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Magazine. Last year, during the council retreat, normally the retreats discuss a whole variety of different policy issues. But you recall last year the big policy issue really was the town's sustainability of its finances and recognizing that we're going to be in a situation of a $5.9 million cumulative shortfall in 5 years. It was very heartening to see that the visioning process pretty much for the most part agreed that this is the top issue of the town, and generally agreed that we needed to increase revenues. And what I have proposed, and there's different ways to go about doing this, but that while this has been studied and I know it's been done in the past, I believe that we should have more dialogue in the community to get the folks out there to understand so that they realize that there's a big problem here. And a lot of time has passed since the visioning process. That was May of last, 7 months ago. So I would suggest that we look at having either a blue ribbon committee or a citizen committee actually have very transparent, very open type of meetings to try to come up with some recommendations. I understand that one of the biggest recommendations that came out of the visioning process was a primary property tax. That's a word that a lot of people don't want to mention, but that's the big ugly gorilla in the room, and that's something that we really need to really address. And I think it's something that at some point needs to go back to voters. But I think before we could do that, I think that the public here in town, we owe it to them to make sure that they understand the dire need that the town's in right now. And in order to do that, I think that it's going to take a little bit of a process to get people on board to understand before they're asked to consider a ballot item on this. So that's one way about doing this, and I know Councilmember Magazine and I've discussed this, and there's other ways about going about doing this, but I've done this very successfully with other ballot items having to do with bond issues, and it seems like, why are we doing this? It's redundant. We know what the solution is. But again, I think it's getting that word out there, because we have a very difficult town here. Not everyone takes the paper, reads the newspaper. Not everyone attends council meetings or watches council meetings on TV. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just are not as well informed as they should be about the problem that we have. And that's the only reason why I'm suggesting going down that path that I've recommended.
Mayor.
I hope I answered your question.
Something further?
Yes. Grady knows that I'm very much opposed to that approach. I didn't mince words with him. We're doing study after study after study. We're kicking the can down the road. Creating a blue ribbon commission, in my view, is not something that's going to inform the public. Vision Fountain Hills had a big meeting. Vision Fountain Hills agreed that we need to do something fairly specific. I just think that another committee studying the issue, coming forth with recommendations, just puts off the inevitable while we sink deeper and deeper into the hole. So I just want to say I'm very much opposed to creating yet another committee and kicking it down the road.
Councilman Tolis?
Mayor, thank you. I'm going to respectfully disagree with Councilman Magazine in regards to nothing has been done. Since 2010, and I think we all recognize that the economy after 2008, 9, 10 was terrible. Construction spending was way down. Property values deteriorated dramatically. People lost their homes. Foreclosures were very high. Right now, developers are back. There's a lot of development, and I can remind everyone, I think you all know, we have the Fire Rock townhomes going in. That's a huge development in Fire Rock that's going to bring additional residents to this community. We have a Darrow Canyon that is well on its way. They are building up there. They've already had their public report approved, so we're going to have continued growth in that area. We have the downtown. Remember how much time and effort the town staff and everyone put into in this council in approving a project for the downtown. While you never necessarily get the perfect project that everyone is an improvement for, but that's a great project, and that's going to bring a lot of new commerce downtown, 400 new apartment complexes and people. The school district, we talk about the school district and what's happened in the last 6 years. You have a new superintendent, Patrick Sweeney. He's doing a phenomenal job to promote that district. And if you want to bring families to this community, the school district is a key component to how we do that. He's doing a great job. You talk about the school land. The school land, the town council has nothing that we necessarily could immediately do except for look at the zoning, look at what the options are available. And before, while I was running, I reached out to you and I had a discussion about this. So the president of the school board, Jill Reed, and the school board itself is going to need to move forward with approving the potential sale of that land and get it as a ballot initiative, and that's a process. So without the school board's approval and their commitment to move forward on that and even put it to the voters, that's a non-starter. So we do need housing. The state trust land, I think that's going to be a huge key element to the growth of this community. The higher density out there, I know that many people on this council have already talked about that being a strong initiative that we want to see happen. So I think a lot of positive things are being done, and I think development fees are going to be continue to come in, and we have a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of positives too. And I commend you, I commend Dory and her committee, and John and all of you who've worked on this. Everything you have here are all fantastic, and they're big, high-level goals that we should hone down on a few of them, and probably a few of them would be the affordable housing in this community, to bring people into this community. I think that's a key. Doing everything we can to have the strongest school district in the valley, and we will attract the demographics that will balance this community so that we ultimately don't have an aging resident community, which will therefore add to the issues of the financial stability, because too many people own second homes. We want people that are full-time residents here that are going to spend their money in this community. Thank you.
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to clarify, if I understand what Grady was saying, he's not saying that he wants to form another committee to restudy this. What he's saying is, and you can jump in if I don't quite understand this, is that once there are conclusions reached as to what we must do to bring in this revenue, okay, whatever 2 things or 3 things should be considered, that then the task of this Blue Ribbon Committee would be to go out to the public and say, you know the problem, these are the solutions, which one would you, what do you want? Because just sticking it on the ballot and having people not quite understand and voting it down once again for the 4th time or whatever is put on the ballot is not going to help us any. So it's not like a rehashing or re-examination. It's that committee then goes out and says, here are the options, now you pick one.
Mayor,
Exactly.
communication is a key factor in what we're
Exactly.
talking about tonight. That needs to be ramped up in lots of ways. Social media, as Ray said, so many others that we have to reach the 24,000 or whatever number we want to choose to get well understood of why this is necessary. I think that the sooner the better. I mean, we know that. I was on the commission with these two gentlemen and got my feet wet with them, so I appreciate that with them. But you're right. We do need to move on this, but there are some laws and some other things that we have to take into consideration, and make sure that the numbers that we settle on are not going to hamstring us down in the future. That we have the ability to look 30 years out, not just to 2020, but to make sure that we've got a funding source that goes on. To Mr. Tolles' comments about the growth in the real estate development in town, that's great. It helps in a lot of ways. What it doesn't help, because we don't have a real estate tax other than the secondary taxes that we're about to pay off as a town, those real estate values really don't make a difference unless we had a primary property tax, and then it would make a huge difference because the value of the assessed valuation of the town would go up and the rate that we would need would come down. We're fortunate in the community colleges to have that ability to tax the real estate owners, and this growth in Fountain Hills is good for us because it's adding to our income.
Yeah.
So I know everybody has a lot of questions, but I'm wondering if the council wouldn't mind holding things, reading all of this, and then let's sit down and have that work study where all of this can be brought out. Some of this could be also brought up to date with what we've done so far, and then we can reach some conclusions through that way, if you don't mind, if we can do that, because I'm sure everybody's got tons of questions, and we could probably be here all night.
Mayor,
so.
I just don't think my colleagues' comments can go unanswered, and I'd like to make a quick statement about that.
All right.
The thought, with all due respect to my colleague, the thought that we can grow our way out of this, to me, is pure fantasy. When Park Place is finished, they say 6 years. The estimate is we'll realize maybe $80,000 in tax money. That's 6 years from now. The State Land Trust. Who knows when that's going to be auctioned? Who knows when ground's going to be broken? Who knows when people are going to move in? Who knows when we're going to get any tax receipts? The school system. How long is that going to take to improve to a point where we're bringing other kinds of folks into town? So in the meantime, our expenses are going up and our revenues are staying the same. And so town manager mentioned a $5.9 million cumulative deficit over the next 5 years. I've talked, I don't want to put them on the spot, but I won't. I've talked to staff, and we're not talking $5.9 million. It's going to be a lot higher than that, and we're going to see that in the budget. And there are other things coming along, one of which is on the agenda, which I'll be discussing, which is the court decision on the pension. So to think we can grow our way out of this is just not, in my view, realistic. And what do we do in the meantime? What do we do next year, and the following year, and years after that, when all we're seeing is a little bit of increase, but our expenses are going up incrementally? Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Tolles?
Mayor, thank you. And here are the two giant elephants in the room. Okay, yep, fire and police. So the primary property tax has failed 4 times. I don't think it's going to pass no matter how much education you put forth in this community. So if we want to really address this issue, we need to address what are the alternatives to the way that we have it right now? Whether it be, and we've had discussions with this, and I brought it up during the campaign, whether we go to the state legislature and try to establish a fire district once again, so that you'd have a secondary tax that would be specific, because the residents of this community and everyone I've spoke with wants to know if they're going to be paying for something that it's specific and they know that it's not going to be arbitrary and it's not going to continue to have the increases without some accountability. And in regards to the police, and we're not going to solve this tonight, but those are the two major issues. So if we wanted to have a study, that's what needs to be discussed. It's the two largest portions of our budget.
Mayor, if I could say that I'm available anytime, almost anytime, to meet with you individually or in groups. I like lunch. I like cocktails, so I'm open to just about anything. But I do think
Cocktails at lunch.
Yeah. So I just want to let you know that when you're available, I'm available, as are members of the commission as well. We need to make sure that this is a plan that's good for a long time, that all the input that we need to make it successful is in front of us. So don't hesitate to come to us, as coffee is a good one too. But we before we get together again in a workshop in February, for example, let's have some discussion.
Councilman Leger.
Thank you, Mayor. I was looking at the agenda here, and it looks like you guys are looking for some direction on the strategic plan. And, I mean, it goes without saying, you did a tremendous job. Thank you. Dory, the group that you're involved in, you guys have done a tremendous job. We all know, and we'll be talking until the cows come home, or at least on the reservation, they used to come in my yard before there was a fence over there on that side of town. But what we do know is that the elephant in the room is revenue solutions, okay? So it's a no-brainer. We need to drill down on that. Take another bite at the apple and see where we land. But with respect to next steps regarding the strategic plan, which is, I think, kind of where you left off, we need to operationalize the action items. We need to incorporate them into the budget. Decisions need to be made in terms of what we can afford to do and what we can't afford right now. And I think that's the way we move the plan forward. And I think in concert with that, the revenue solutions discussion will occur. And for those of us that have been around for a while, I'm just going to mention this, Dana. I think you and I have talked about this before. Some time ago, we hired a financial consultant. Hawking. Thank you, Cecil. And there is actually a Hawking report out there that has a whole it has a whole spectrum of revenue solutions. So let's not reinvent the wheel. We need to take a look at those, take a bite of the apple, decide where we want to go, and then develop a communication plan to get us there. We know that our development fees over the year have been cut significantly, so that's not going to get us there. Construction sales tax is one-time revenue. I'm not going to get on a lecturing situation, but I just wanted to say you guys did a tremendous job, and I think moving the plan forward starts with developing an implementation plan. Then as we approach our budget, we include the task items into that, and there we go. We're rolling, and never losing sight of the need to come up with revenue solutions and agreeing on what those may be. So thank you for your work, Dory. Thank you and your group for your work. And Mayor, thank you for your time and letting me to say a few things. I know it's been a long discussion.
Okay, so then it sounds like we're all in agreement that there's more work to be done. We'll need to discuss it with you and your team. And we're looking at a work study to sit down and do all this. And we've got plenty of time to prepare for it. For any questions, any way we can help you update this. Grady?
Just add on to your point, Mayor. Dana and I spoke today, and I suggested that maybe we'll take the plan, which I think is a very good plan. The action items are great, and distill that down a little bit more so it becomes more of a plan that has can be implemented, that maybe has responsible parties and dates in it, so that it will give it a little bit more substance. It's not that it wasn't substantive, but from my perspective, I want to ensure that the strategic plan, that the staff and I and the council are able to implement it, since you guys are going to be doing the monitoring. So I want to make sure we do it right. So Dana and I have both committed to try to work between now and the time we have that work session to get that into that kind of format for you.
Okay, so can we just do this as direction to staff, or do we actually need a motion to do this? Can we just do this as direction to staff?
Madam Mayor, you have a motion on the floor to deal with first, and it was
Yeah,
to
if we
move
can
it to the
remember
work
what
study.
it was.
Move to work study, yes.
Just to move to the work study, that was it? Okay, well, that's a good one then.
I'll second that.
I think we already had a second, right? Any other speaker cards?
No, ma'am.
All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
All right, great job. Okay, we got a lot more. Let's move along. Number 16. Yes, we're up to 16. Consideration of Resolution 2016-33 approving the revised town organizational charts for the Administration Department and the Community Services Department, revised fiscal year 2016-17 pay plan, revised schedule of authorized positions, and revised job description to reclassify the tourism coordinator position to communication and marketing coordinator. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, before you, as has been stated, I am recommending that we reclassify our tourism coordinator to a communications and marketing coordinator. Many of you probably realize at one point, back when we had 120 employees, we actually had a public information office. And so a lot of what we used to do back in the day, we had staff that were able to effectively communicate and get our messaging out to the public, and that's been very challenging. Most of the departments are doing that on their own, and they're doing a pretty good job, but it needs to be really centralized. I'm very pleased we have a very talented tourism coordinator, and a lot of what she does, as you're aware of, is marketing. And so what I have proposed before you tonight is to take that position and reclassify it so that it has the marketing aspects and also communications aspect. And if you look at most communities around Arizona and around the country, you don't really see too many that actually have tourism coordinators. It's a very unusual title to have in a classification plan. However, what the tourism coordinator is doing is marketing and promoting. And so that's a very common function in municipal government. So this would be basically taking this position, having this person who everyone knows is Grace, and having her for about 20% of her workload would be in this area of communications and marketing. But the communications is the area that we are deficient in right now. I've been hearing from a number of council members that we need to be much more up on social media. Grace is extremely talented in the social media area. She's also a great writer. One of the things we had budgeted this year was a communications plan, and I thought it'd make more sense to actually have somebody on staff develop a communications plan than pay somebody on the outside to develop it and then have us try to implement it. So that will be one of the first tasks that Grace and I will jointly be working on, is a communications plan. We'll also try to standardize all of our communication tools that we have in the town. And she will be really the focal point when there's requests for public information by the public or by newspapers, so forth. She will be the voice of the town, and I will be the one that will be providing her supervision for that aspect of her job. Because of the dynamic dual that we have, Rachel Goodwin, who is our recreation supervisor, will continue to supervise her in the marketing area, which is the tourism part. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I also have tonight David Trimble, our Administrative Services Director. If you have any questions of him specifically that I can't answer, he's here as well.
Any questions from council? Councilman Yates?
Yes. First off, thank you for all the wonderful work both of you guys do. It's tremendous that we've even been able to accomplish what we do with such little resources. As far as structure, first off, I'm for this 100%. I agree. You got my vote. But as far as structure, having two masters, so to speak, is this the best way to put them in the system?
I think so. And I've actually worked in that situation before. I've had multiple bosses before, and it does work. The primary will be Rachel, and so I will provide her direction, for instance, when it's time to do her evaluation. However, I'll work with Grace on the front end on her goals relating to communications and public information. But for the most part, it's going to be Rachel that will be the direct supervisor.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. So this makes me so happy. I've been bugging Grady for quite some time about the importance of this role in town. you see how social media can go sideways very quickly with non-truths and things that go out and go viral, for lack of a better word. So having a face out there that's able to put out truthful information, and certainly not jump in the weeds in the comments of a Facebook post, but being out there for us, advocating and putting out truthful information. Anecdotally, social media is literally the #1 skill set that's people are sought after on the West Coast of all of the West Coast states. So it's a hot job for. As far as attractiveness as for a role, it's great for progression for people looking to not be a tourism coordinator, but more tout the skills of their marketing skill set. So,
Vice Mayor, who do you work for?
This is a really excellent move to be in the game. We talk about that all the time. We have to be on the field in order to be in the game. So this is how you do it. So thank you.
Councilman Magazine?
Councilman DePorter and I ought to talk more often, because I too have been talking to Grady about this for some time, and indicating that perhaps with the exception of financial sustainability, it's one of the most important things we could possibly do. Just witness the discussion we had with regard to the strategic plan in terms of communicating with the public. We have to communicate with the public. And we had talked about consultants, we had talked about adding a staff person, which is probably a non-starter, and he came up with this idea, which I'd love to have somebody full-time, but and adding 20%, having 20% of Grace's time is terrific. She'll now have 170% of her time committed to working, because I don't know how she's going to do it. She's going to have to clone herself. But no, I'm delighted with this change, and I think it'll make a big difference.
Anybody else? We're very lucky to have someone who can do both jobs.
Exactly.
Very fortunate. And I work with Grace all the time, and she's amazing, and she's taught me so much. I'm not quite doing that Twitter thing, but I know she can do it if we need it. Councilman Yates?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 2016-33.
Second.
Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right. Congratulations, Grace. You now have 2 jobs instead of 1.
Does she get a new parking spot?
Okay, we're going to number 17, consideration of resolution 2016-41, approving the Town of Fountain Hills Personnel Policies and Procedures Amendment relating to merit leave, exempt leave policies, and declaring an emergency. Grady, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Periodically, we review our personnel regs, and one of the things that I've observed over the past year or so is that as a lean organization, a lot of our employees put in a lot of time on the job. And as an example, when we have events like the 4th of July or the Turkey Trot or something like that, I end up granting some time off for employees, and I do a memo, saying based on the amount of time that you give up on a 4th of July, which you'll never get back, I'm going to give you, equivalent amount of time so that you can use it, and so forth. But I found that I have a little bit of an inequity situation here, and that is I have employees that regularly to do their jobs, the exempt employees that don't get paid overtime or compensatory time, work on Fridays and weekends just to be able to get their jobs done. So what I have before you is basically a proposal for exempt leave, which would grant 40 hours of leave. It's one time. It goes away. It doesn't carry over. If a new hire is hired, it's prorated. It's a use it or lose it proposition. There's no cash out on this. It doesn't cost us any extra money because it's exempt. So employees who might use the leave. You recall about a year and a half ago, we didn't increase the accrual rate for vacation, but we changed that they can keep it longer. They can keep up to 2 years of their vacation. So that was a problem we had at the time. They were working so hard they couldn't take their vacation, and they were losing vacation time. So we fixed that a year ago. But with this policy, this would allow me to give the exempt employees the ability to take time off and allow me to treat all my exempt employees the same. And this is a very common practice. I've worked in other cities, and they have a variety of different leave policies. They call it administrative leave, which I don't like to use that here because that's, you know, you don't want to be put on administrative leave. But they call it executive leave, exempt leave, a variety of different names for the same thing. And we did a little bit of research to make sure we weren't out in left field when we proposed this. And we found a good number, probably a half to two-thirds of all the Valley cities have a very similar practice. Dave Trimble's here. There's another part of this. It's called merit leave. This would be a ability for me to grant leave over and above for people that have had extraordinary performance or we're working on a project, and this would be both for hourly or exempt employees who qualify. I don't think on the exempt leave, I don't see that those people would necessarily get it. It's just, it's there, it's a tool for me to reward extraordinary either service or performance, and it would not be something I anticipate really doing unless something came before me that's like, wow, that is amazing, to reward our employees, because we don't have any kind of bonuses or any financial incentives. So this is one thing that we could actually use that I think really does not cost the town a whole lot. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Trimble.
Mayor, Council, I'm not sure there's a whole lot more I can add, other than to say, to kind of reiterate what the town manager said, which is we believe it to be, budget neutral or no impact to fiscally. And the other thing, we're asking for the emergency declaration just so that it can become effective at the beginning of the calendar year. So with that, if there's any questions.
Questions for Dave? Comment? Vice Mayor?
I think this is excellent. I think the ability to be flexible with time is what makes working somewhere attractive, especially when it's budget neutral. There's also a lot of employers now who have no time policy. Their vacation and sick is non-existent, and you get your job done. So it puts more back on the employer, and also it's part of what's attracting people to jobs. So if it's not going to cost us much to give people, an 8 hours back of their lives because they did something really exemplary, because we don't give out gold watches, I think this is a good thing to have that flexibility to do. So I totally applaud the move for extreme flexibility on this front.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
No? Okay. Then I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve Resolution 21641.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Okay. We'll go on to items 18 and 19. For these, we'll have one staff report. All speaker cards for both of these items will be taken during number 18. So I will open the public hearing. To receive comments on a proposed special use permit to allow EPCOR Water to install a 50-foot tall radio antenna at the Adero Canyon Booster Pump Station and Reservoir Site. Okay. And we have Bob with us.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This application is for a 50-foot monopole radio antenna. The tower is required to request the special use permit for 3 reasons. Its height is over 30 feet in a residential district, it is within 300 feet of a residential district, and because it's not a stealth design. The pole will be galvanized steel, and the theory is that it will weather to a medium gray color that will help it blend into the sky and be a little less obtrusive. The height is necessary for the radio signals to make it back to EPCOR over the intervening terrain. Similar poles are in town. There's one at the Morning Dove Drive water tank site, as well as the Eagles Nest Boulder Drive, in Eagles Nest, and then the Boulder Drive tank also has a tower similar to this. To my knowledge, they have not generated any complaints. The upper left photo shows the Adero Canyon area. This is the yellow there. That is the water tank site right now. The antenna will be, this is a blow up of that area. The antenna will be right next to the water tank. monopole is, the entire area is under construction with Toll Brothers down here in parcel 1 and parcel 7. Camelot Homes is in parcel 8 there, and then the roads are still under construction as well. So there's no immediate residential dwellings to be bothered by any construction that would be going on. And the tank site itself is already fenced off, as it is an existing water tank. The tower profile, that's this one here, shows the monopole as a 50-foot tall pole. But as you can see, and you probably have it on your screens or in your staff reports, the concrete base is shown as being an additional 2 feet above the ground, effectively creating a 52-foot tall pole, at least on this profile. Planning and Zoning Commission noted that in their public hearing, and they requested clarification. However, no one from EPCOR was at the hearing, so as part of their recommendation, they recommend approval, but they wanted clarification, so they recommend approval subject to clarification as to whether or not this is going to be a 50-foot tall tower or a 52-foot tall tower. Staff believes that the radio antenna is a necessary piece of equipment for the water company, and it provides them with the ability to properly monitor the water tank, and it will not create a detriment to the area, so staff recommends approval also. Thank you.
Did any of the builders that are building in Adero Canyon, do they have any comment about this?
The two builders, as well as MCO, were all recipients of our public hearing notice, and nobody had any comments.
Nobody had a comment, okay. Okay, questions for Bob? Councilman Leger.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I had the same thought, and now I'm looking in front of me here. It says the applicant was Francisco Lopez MCO Properties, so I would assume that they're on board because they're requesting the special use permit.
Yeah, they
Is that
applied
accurate?
for it on behalf of EPCOR, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Why can't it be stealth? Is it because it's the certain kind of tower it is?
It could be stealth. It could be a palm tree, or it could be a saguaro. Typically, we don't do the saguaros over 40 feet. Palm trees, we've kind of gotten the idea that we don't like those anymore. But it could be a stealth design. But this is a pole is not too big, and it's going to be gray in the sky. It tends to blend.
All the other ones in town are just the
ones at the
poles.
water tanks, yeah.
Plain poles. Yeah.
Any other questions for Bob? And we have no speaker cards, so then I will close the public hearing. Okay. Consideration of proposed special use permit as just presented. Any further council discussion? Okay, then, all in favor of the motion? I need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, now all in favor of the motion.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you, Bob. Don't go anywhere. For items 20 to 23, there will be one staff report, but we will need separate motions for 20, 21, and 23, okay? So we'll start with consideration of Resolution 2016-17, declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the town clerk and entitled the Town of Fountain Hills Noise Regulations. Grady?
Yes, Mr. Rogers will be giving a presentation. I do want to point out something that you recall. This was a two-step process, so at the last meeting on this subject, we had a number of recommendations. The council discussed those. They took input from the citizens, and we're back tonight with basically the recommendations and direction that you gave to staff at that meeting. I will point out one thing, and I'm not sure this was part of Mr. Rogers' presentation, but recall during that same evening we had a resident who was complaining up in the North Heights area about truck traffic noise and the jake braking that was occurring. So we did take the liberty. I realized that was not something that was discussed at the time, but that was something we went ahead and added as well to this. Most communities around the valley do have prohibitions against jake brakes by trucks, so we thought we'd be very proactive and go ahead and include that in this tonight. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So at your last meeting on December 1st, Council directed staff to amend the proposed noise ordinance with five directions. First was to remove the 2 points of decibel level measurement process in favor of using a single point located adjacent to the exterior wall of the complainant's structure. That has been included, and that's part of your package. The second was establish the daylight hours as 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and the nighttime hours as 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and keep those times consistent all year long. That has also been added, and that's part of your package as well. The third was to establish a maximum decibel level permitted as 70 during daylight hours and 50 during the nighttime hours. That has also been included in your packet. The fourth was to require that permitted events generally end at 10 p.m., but allow event permits to be issued for special events to go until 11 p.m. with a maximum level of 70 decibels between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m., still closing down at 11 p.m. That's also been included in the ordinance. And fifth, to address apartment and condominium noise within multi-unit buildings, similar to the method that Tempe used, by requiring a point of measurement to be within the complainant's unit. That has also been included. And then, as Grady mentioned, in addition to those 5 amendments, due to the recent complaints regarding the large trucks downshifting or jake braking rather than using their brakes to slow down on Golden Eagle Boulevard, staff included this provision that would prohibit that, and this is also included in the packet that you have and in the ordinance. Staff believes that the proposed ordinance before you tonight, this is, I believe, version 5, reflects what council requested us to do and recommends approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And I know that we had an email from another resident in relation to leaf blowers and construction equipment, and I did respond to them after talking to you that, just so they know we covered this, that leaf blowers were included, but the person misunderstood and thought that they were exempt, but they're not. They're just exempt from that they might be louder than 70, but they still can't start after 6.
Right. They were only exempted during the daylight hours anyway.
Right. Okay. So there was just a misunderstanding in that, but I think we got that straightened out. So let's go to council questions. Councilman Brown.
Thank you. I would caution the council to reconsider the jake brake comment. Coming out of Eagle's Nest is a downhill run that goes from, I guess it's probably 3 miles down the hill to the high school. When you have a truck that is loaded coming off a hill like that, if you're insisting on having the brakes hold that truck back for the full 3 miles, by the time they get to the high school, they virtually will have no braking power left because the brakes will be glazed over and hot. I do not have a resolution. I can tell you that Steadfast was the contractor that was named as the culprit for using the jake brakes up to 100 trips per day. Well, it's more like at the most 20 trips per day. But they were the ones that were named, and they did stop and talk to the lady, and I understand there's a possibility they even sent a little gift over with an apology to it. I cannot confirm that, but I was told that was going to happen. But I would seriously reconsider putting the jake brake limits on that particular road. It's the only road in and out, legally in and out of Eagle's Nest for trucks, and I would be very careful with limiting the jake brakes. It's dangerous.
Thank you. Councilman Magazine.
Mayor, when we discussed this at the last meeting, I think there was pretty much a consensus that 70 decibels during the daylight hours was acceptable. Frankly, I went along with it just to go along with it. But after examining more carefully other jurisdictions, but also looking at the monitoring that our staff did, it occurred to me that the only time that we even approach that kind of decibel level is with traffic. And what I'm proposing is purely optics, because it's not going to make any difference, practically speaking, because we don't approach those levels. And so I'm going to suggest that we change that to 65 decibel level for daylight hours. I'm not going to make a motion until I can hear sort of the sentiment of the council members.
Any other comments, questions from council? Councilman Leger?
Mayor, I was just wondering, do we have any public speakers on this item?
I'm sure we do.
Okay. I think I'd like to reserve my comments in response to your observation after I hear public comments.
Sure.
Okay, and I'll just remind everybody that I guess, Bob, we were at 79, and we reduced it to 70.
So far, yep.
Okay, so we were all the way at 79, and we already talked about coming down to 70.
Our original recommendation was 80, you dropped it down to 70 last.
And we dropped down to 70, but it was 79, and we were
Currently
just going to go
79.
up 1 to 80, so we did already drop it considerably. Okay. Speaker cards, please.
Mayor, do you want to address item number 20 with a motion first, and then we can move on to 21, where they've all applied to speak?
Oh, they were all on 21? Okay. All right. So we'll need a motion for 20, so we can go on to 21.
Which is to declare it a public...
Just to declare it a public record.
So moved.
Mayor, second.
I would like, how will I change that motion? I would like to strike the Jake break portion of that ordinance
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'll rescind my second.
Who did the original? Did you?
Myself, I'm totally
Rescind
open
that?
for the...
Okay. Do you want to make the motion?
Sure, certainly.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2016-17, declare it as a public record, as certain documents attached to the Town of Fountain Hills noise ordinance, and striking the comment on the Jake breaks as being restricted on Golden Eagle Drive.
Mayor, second.
Any-
Madam Mayor, for clarification, the noise ordinance is a generic cover of Jake breaks townwide. Do you want to leave it in but restrict it with respect to Golden Eagle only?
Golden Eagle only.
Thank you.
And we do have a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mayor,
Councilman
can I
Toles?
just ask Councilman Brown, in regards to your expertise on what other options do trucks have if they were restricted from doing this Jake braking, because apparently not every truck does it. So just help me understand.
To my knowledge, there is no other option on this, and I would ask, if I could ask Justin possibly to stand up and help me answer this question. On the Jake brakes, the question is, Justin, do you know of any other than the 10-wheelers with the tag axles that carry a lot heavier load than a single axle dump truck? It's just the amount of weight that causes the brakes to glaze over, hence they use their Jake brake, and the smaller trucks don't have as heavy a load, hence they don't have Jake brakes. Is that right?
Excuse me, Mayor, Councilmember Brown, that is correct.
Does that help, Councilman Tullis?
It does, except for the fact that Susie, who came here last week, it seemed like there was one truck. So there's a lot of construction going on up there, and it seems to me that not everybody is Jake braking. So it seemed like there was a specific issue with a specific truck that she had, and I'm just curious how everybody else is slowing down.
So I specifically talked to the owner of Steadfast. I called him the very next morning and quizzed him on it. Number one, the number of loads that they haul out today will never even come close to 100, even if they have 5 or 6 trucks hauling that even aren't theirs. And if they're a 10-wheeler with a tag axle, and I'm going to say 85,000 pounds?
Approximately 85,000.
Approximately. They are heavy. And that's the reason for the Jake brake. Where a little single axle dump truck will haul 6,000 pounds. There lies the difference.
And for some additional clarification, not all of the trucks actually have Jake brakes on them. A majority of them have retarders.
And so that is actually different. It does not create that noise. So a lot of the newer trucks that are moving concrete type materials, they have retarders. And that is a transmission brake. And so there's a low grumble in there, but more of a high engine sound. So there's certainly a difference between the two.
Madam Mayor.
Anything, are you good with that?
Go ahead.
Okay, Councilman
I'm not sure if
Yates?
it's Bob or Captain Letourneau. Practical purposes, how many calls are we getting? Although I appreciate last meeting's resident and making the case for it being a disturbance, but is this an anomaly or is this a regular occurrence? And so whomever of you would be taking those calls? Thank you, Mayor.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Yates. If you remember last meeting, I broke down our calls for service. I have it broke down again. It just depends how much construction's being done. Obviously, last year, Fire Rock, or earlier in this year, Fire Rock, we had a ton of calls. We had a lot of complaints. We haven't had a lot of recent complaints. We really haven't. If it kicks up again, we'll get calls for it. One of the things that we'll do is, we talked about last week, myself meeting with the contractor who is usually hiring a trucking company, discussing these type of issues, giving them fair warning, whether it's not only trucking or jake braking, but are the trucks safe to be on the road? Because sometimes they're not. We took 11 off last year off the road. As I look at these stats I brought tonight, none. We didn't break it down to jake braking. We just broke it down to noise calls for construction. It's not as many as you think. If you construction noise related, 8 calls for service. We broke it down that way.
What was the time period?
2016. So
For
almost
the year.
1 year.
Okay.
We're just a couple weeks shy of 1 year. Town code noise related calls, 2. That could be, you got to remember, my guys will get a call for service. It starts out one way. My guy's job or discretion is to, when they clear that call through our dispatch system, they may recode it to a more appropriate code. And that's simply for our tracking purpose. So I don't want to get too complicated, but it may start out as a noise complaint and turn into disorderly conduct.
Or DV.
Or domestic violence, or a loud music, a loud party call. So what it may start out as a call for noise, it might develop into something else based on how we handle it. For example, loud music at a residence, 57 calls for service. Loud music at a business, 4. So I tried to break it down. If you remember, I came in last time. I just had 336 calls for service. Trying to break it down so you could see or hear. It's not as much as you may think. Changing the decibel level could alter this in a way if people are confused. For instance, the blowers. We could start getting calls for service on loud blowers, which we did break it down here, landscaper noise-related calls, 2. So it could change based on the call for service, but we may clear it out differently in the long run because we're probably not going to write a landscaper a ticket for a blower, for a noise complaint or a town code violation on the noise. Middle of the night, 11 o'clock at night, we've had calls, not in Fountain Hills. I've been on calls where a guy's using his blower at 11 o'clock at night, believe it or not. So that, we probably would write a ticket. But we still would initially give a warning. But if we went back the next week or we went back twice in one night, he's going to get a ticket. So the discretion and the reasonableness is still the biggest part for us on how we handle it.
Okay, Councilman Toles?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Yates brings up a good point. And you bring up the point that how many calls are we getting for this, so that I would think that your logic was that if we're not getting a lot of calls for this, then the jake braking, removing it from the ordinance isn't an issue. And if that's the premise of the argument, then the same goes for this entire noise ordinance. Correct?
No, that's not correct.
Respectfully.
It's
I-
a safety issue, Art.
Well, it's getting back to what you said, you remove trucks because they're unsafe for the road. And it even goes back to thinking back years ago, passing a Republic Services contract and requiring them to have a new fleet of vehicles. And it's a very similar kind of concept that you need to have safe vehicles on the road. Is it possible that the trucks that are doing this jake braking are not safe to begin with for the demographics of this community and that road coming down Golden Eagle? I don't know, but it seems to be that's a good question.
Jake braking, Councilman Toles, jake braking itself is safe. It's just loud, and it does irritate people. But it is the safest way, especially to come down Eagle Mountain Road. The violations, the equipment violations I'm talking about was brake lines, bad tires. Those had nothing to do with jake braking. Jake braking is the safest way for the truckers to come down a steep hill slowly, because Councilman Brown's right. The brake system will heat up and it'll cause those pads to sear or lock up the braking system, and then they can't stop. You know, they're going to get into a wreck to stop. So he's right. Jake braking is the safest way, but it is loud, especially as they go through town, certain areas where, quite honestly, the public doesn't want any noise, but that's impossible to enforce.
Okay.
Just one quick clarification. When you were talking about noise with business, and you said 4, were you talking about what time frame was that?
Well, so now you had me break it. Now you're breaking it down in a way I didn't look it up. I don't know what time of the day that was. I did say that,
4.
but business, I have to assume it was during the day.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, there was 4. But
Correct. Over
that-
the year.
The whole year? You only had, okay.
Now let me
That's what I
rephrase
wanted.
that. Maybe it could be one of the restaurants that are open at night.
Yeah, well, I was
Right,
just wanted
but
to,
only
I just
4.
wanted to make sure I heard you say 4.
Correct.
For the whole year.
For the whole year, that we attributed to a business.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Magazine?
Is it possible that school buses jake brake when they're going down a hill?
I don't think they're built that way, that they need to jake brake.
I just wanted to figure out why I'm hearing this in front of my house.
School buses don't have to jake brake.
Any,
Mayor, if I'd like some clarification. Where are we at in this conversation? Do we have a motion on the table, or are we looking at an amendment?
we do have a motion.
Okay, and could Councilman Brown, could you restate that motion, please?
Certainly. I used the exact verbiage that is suggested, with the exception of striking the comment on jake braking on Golden Eagle only.
So in essence, you're creating an exemption for Golden Eagle.
Because it is the only truck route that's allowed going into Eagle's Nest.
Okay.
If they could use Sunridge Canyon, it would be a totally different ride. But because they can't use Sunridge Canyon and are forced to use Golden Eagle, that's why I'm exempting that.
Thanks for the clarification.
You bet.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Okay, we go on to 21, consideration of ordinance 16-10, adopting the Town of Fountain Hills noise regulations by reference and amending the Town of Fountain Hills Town Code, Chapter 11, Section 11-17, by revising provisions related to noise violations. Since we have all of our speaker cards on this item, let's start with those.
Chad Meissen, followed by Joel Trumper.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Chad Meissen. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Carpenter, Hazelwood, Delgado, and Bolin, which represents the Villas at Copperwind Association. It's a condo association here in Fountain Hills. The Villas at Copperwind opposes the proposed Town of Fountain Hills noise regulations as they're currently drafted. I'll be brief in my comments just to address 3 primary objections to the current proposed regulations and an easy fix, really, for each issue. First, Footnote 1 to the decibel chart, that's table 2 in the proposed regulations, does not adequately protect residents of multifamily communities. It creates two problems. One, it requires intrusion into a complainant's unit to test for violation, something that's not required for single-family homes. And two, it does not protect a resident in a multifamily community who wishes to enjoy his or her patio or balcony but cannot because of loud noise emanating from within the multifamily community. Just some language that needs changed, and it's our recommendation it should be removed entirely or should be modified to have the measurement location for multifamily communities be any area that is within the complaining resident's exclusive use area and control, such as a balcony or a patio. Second, there appears to be an inconsistency in our view between subsection I-8 of the proposed regulations and footnote 2 to the decibel chart. Again, that's table 2 in the proposed regulations. Subsection I-8 would allow loud noise after 11 p.m. pursuant to a special event permit, while footnote 2 limits it to 11 p.m. So this seems contradictory, and it's our recommendation that subsection I-8 simply be removed to eliminate that inconsistency. And third, finally, the proposed decibel level, as Councilmember Magazine had pointed out, is still too high. My colleagues have addressed this in previous meetings and correspondence, so I'm not going to go into great detail on that and be repetitive, except to again propose that the maximum decibel level be set at 56 decibels during the daytime hours and 45 decibels during the evening or overnight hours. That would be more consistent with neighboring towns and cities. Thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, thank you.
Joel Trumper, followed by Warren Witten.
Good evening. My name is Joel Trumper. Thank you for your time tonight, Mayor and Council. I saw this, read it in the newspaper. This has been going on for months, reference to noise. I just have one suggestion, and I'm not speaking for the sheriff's office. I'm a retired police officer from the Chicago area. I was actually a police commander, and we had a entertainment district in our town. To try to measure decibel levels from the complainant's house, I'll just give you a simple example. You got Copperwind. They've got an entertainment thing going on outside. The sheriff's office gets a call from the condo 20 units down. It says the noise is too loud. The sheriff's office comes out with a decibel reader. Sorry, sir, they're just under it. You have to put up with this level of noise. Sheriff leaves. 10 minutes later, the unit 15 away calls because his neighbor called him and said, I'm too far away. Now the sheriff has to come back out. Checks that. You're right. It's just 3 over. Now he has to go to Copperwind and say, got to turn it down an inch. Just an inch. So they turn it down. They're still not satisfied. The guy 5 units away now calls. I'm just trying to tell you, I don't think you should be looking at it from the location of the complainant. I think you should be measuring what we did back in Illinois. We took a spot from the property line of, an example, Copperwind. And whatever distance you want to say. I mean, I know that sound carries much greater out here than it does back in Illinois. Whatever the distance, I'm not questioning distance or decibel meter readings. I'm just saying you should have a consistent distance and say if it's 500 yards or if it's 50 feet, whatever. But it should be from the property line of where the music is coming from. Otherwise, you're going to be having these guys chasing back and forth all night long. And I'm just using the Copperwind. I'm not against Copperwind. I'm not for Copperwind. I live on Cholla. It doesn't affect me. Okay? I'm just looking at it from the perspective of you're looking at trying to cut costs. One example is police or sheriff's department. Instead of having the sheriff's department out there a half a dozen times playing a game with people, This is the distance from here. I'm sorry you live within this distance. You're going to have to put up with a little more noise than the guy that lives 20 units down. That's all my thought. So thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Take care.
Warren Witten, followed by Amber Lee Dabrowski.
Hello, I've been a resident here for 5 years, and for 5 years I put up with,
State your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Warren
Thank you.
Witten. I have put up with the Alamo Saloon across Shea Boulevard from my residence. Now, with a frontage road and how wide Shea Boulevard is, and then my yard, there are weekends when, and late evenings, that we basically go to bed with earplugs.
You saying Shea or Saguaro?
I'm sorry, Saguaro.
Okay.
The Alamo, there's a frontage road in front of Alamo.
Right.
Then there's Saguaro Boulevard, 4 lanes, and then my property. And it has, and years ago, I did look at the town ordinance on noise, and I thought, this is pretty, objective or subjective, and never really said anything about it. But the Alamo has been better. I heard through the grapevine that they have a new owner, or in the last year or two, and it's gotten a little better. But like, for instance, just this past weekend, they had the hipsters there. And, I'm from that era. I mean, I like that music. However, I went to bed at 10:30 and you couldn't hear anything. 10 minutes to 12, I wake up and you can hear the music loud. And basically what they do is they want to smoke outside, so they prop the doors open and they turn the volume up so that they can hear it as outside as well as they can hear it inside. And that's been, an ongoing problem that we've had to live with. And when I bought the place, I thought that we were far enough away of a buffer there that we wouldn't have trouble with them. They used to have a gigantic boom box or a subwoofer in there, and everybody's pulled up alongside of one at a stoplight and heard this rattling noise outside. We used to have that coming from there as well. And you couldn't hear the words of the music, but boy, the whole thing just rumbled like crazy. So I really am encouraged that the town is trying to put some teeth into the noise ordinance. And I certainly am excited that possibly we will be able to have some peace at night, especially after midnight. Thank you.
Okay, and just so you know that we were considering 10 o'clock as the cutoff time for that 70 decibels.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
Anything before midnight is even good.
Ah.
It's just you wake up at midnight and you can't go back to sleep, so you go get your earplugs and put them in.
Thank you.
Amber Lee Dabrowski, followed by Jeremy Daltrey.
Well, good evening, everybody, Madam Mayor, council members. First, I want to thank you all for being here, of course, this evening, and an early Merry Christmas. Shall we not see each other before then? Amber Lee Dabrowski, resident of Fountain Hills, almost 5 years now. I'd like to say, in echoing what the previous speaker just spoke, we are talking about Fountain Hills in general, not just one business, not one location. And I do hope that we do have a resolution this evening, because I'm sure we all don't want to be here till 9 o'clock plus moving forward. I just have 3 bullet points here. I think that it is a valuable investment for enforcing the code regulation, and I thank the sheriff's office for learning and using that piece of equipment when we do acquire it. I think that's the staff's recommendation is agreeable, and I fully support it, with Councilmember Brown's striking of the Golden Eagle. We certainly don't want trucks running straight into the high school. So I thank you for that. And that's all I have for this evening, so thank you.
Thank you, Amberly.
Jeremy Daughtry, followed by William Hines.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Jeremy Doherty. I'm the excuse me. I'm the general manager of the Copperwind Resort, and I just wanted to speak briefly about my agreement with this actual proposal. I've worked throughout the valley, from Tempe to Paradise Valley, most recently at the Sanctuary Camelback Mountain Resort and Spa. I was a general manager there in a town that's very strict on their music in their town and all of the light and sound that they have there. It can have a very, very detrimental effect on your business. And from listening throughout tonight, revenue seems to be a really big piece to this topic, right? And we have very big plans for Copperwind. When I started there, I just really saw so much potential. I see so much of a draw to this town that we can really bring a lot more people to Copperwind. We can bring a lot more people to experience the views and the beauty of this area that haven't quite seen it yet. And with that comes revenues, and with that comes revenues for the town. I think 70 decibels is very reasonable, but anybody that's gone to a wedding, 50 decibels is very, very quiet. That's a vacuum. You can't have a real event outdoors for 50 decibels. It's very, 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 very limited. So I think 70 is very fair. I think that's something that should be considered to retain moving forward, and I think something we respect regardless of whatever the decision is. We want to be very fair neighbors. We want to be good members of the community. But I think if you get below 70, it really does have a detrimental effect on being able to retain business and attract business. So thank you.
Thank you.
William Hines, followed by Mike Dickerson.
Mayor, council members. My name is Bill Hines. I'm the owner of Copperwind Resort. I think this is our third proposal that I'm here in support of. For those who haven't been through all these meetings, it has been months and months and months, and hopefully months isn't about to turn into years, where I can't even tell you how much work's gone into this. Task force, people on this council were part of those task forces. They've done a tremendous amount of research. We've hired sound engineers. We've tried to work with our community, and this is just Copperwind. Last month when we came here, the most recent proposal was brought forth with input from MCSO, and I thought that was very valuable input. And the proposal was for discussion, 80 decibels indoors with the doors and windows closed. That's what we all came to discuss with input from MCSO. In the end, it's MCSO who gets sent out and has to deal with these issues. And might I tell you, we're talking about 4 complaints last year, in this entire year, 2 weeks shy of a new year. We are going to do whatever it takes to comply. I've hired a general manager from the sanctuary, from Paradise Valley. His goals on events and weddings and business, if he could come close to the numbers produced by Sanctuary, we could make up that entire $5.5 million deficit to the town of Fountain Hills in bed tax alone in 5 years. And I'm not saying that in jest. We are trying to run a business, and we're trying to be practical about it. And so I assumed if indoors at 80 decibels, proposed for discussion with input from MCSO, with doors and windows closed, came back at 80 decibels outside, that would be reasonable for everybody. But what keeps happening is everybody goes, well, what about 5 lower? What about 5 lower? Lower than 70 decibels, we cannot do events anywhere but on our wedding lawn, which is hundreds and hundreds of feet from the nearest neighbor. Let me repeat that. We cannot do events. It will be, I'm not going to put a number on it, but it's in the millions in what that could impact in our future revenues because of the rooms that are tied and the food and beverage that is tied to these events. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to this town if you cut it again. So I've got a event tennis court that sits 30 feet from the property line. The villas next to us built 30 feet from the property line after the tennis courts and the event lawns were put in. They knew about it, it was disclosed in their CCNRs, and no matter what anybody says, there's only one HOA that's hired a law firm and made a huge deal out of this and wasted months and months of time on 4 noise complaints. So again, I will support 70 decibels outside, but if you cut it again, it's millions of revenue to me, and it's hundreds of thousands to this council. And you're going to make it so close that you are going to increase calls to MCSO by a factor of who knows what if they can pull out their phone and say, oh, now we're really close. Let's wait for it to hit. You got to leave a little room for MCSO to use discretion, or you are going to result in calling out MCSO hundreds of times because you've lowered it to a point where everybody's going to be bumping up against that sound. So those are my comments.
Can I ask you a quick question? This is the first I'm hearing about CCNRs. So is that people that move, can you just explain that? They have to, is that?
The developer, this isn't supposed to be a copper wind issue, but since that seems to be the primary opposition every single meeting, the developer of the resort developed the villas at Copperwind, and he wrote the CCNRs. And in there is a disclosure that every homeowner gets acknowledging they are next to a resort and club property, acknowledging and accepting they will not complain about noise. So the fact that that is what has been the instigator of striking down every proposal from this council and the constant cutting, and it just sickens me. But I continue to show up. We will support 70. I'm not sure what we can do on our tennis court. You're going to, at 70 instead of 80, you're going to get a ton of calls to MCSO. You're inviting that. But to be a good neighbor, we do need to have a balance, and I want to. But my gosh, okay. I'm pleading for 80 outdoors, not indoors with the windows, doors, and closed. I agree with you. Outdoors.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Magazine. Oh yeah, sure. Councilman Magazine has a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
You obviously have competitors throughout the valley for the same kind of business you do. Are they closing because of the lower decibel levels? Because as we look at other municipalities, we see that most of them have a range of decibel levels that's lower than 70. Some as low as 45 and 50.
I don't think that's true.
It is true. And
I think some have higher and some have lower. I think it's where are they measuring it from. Where you're measuring from, do you have an indoor facility or do you have an outdoor facility? We don't have an indoor large facility at any resort, obviously in Fountain Hills. So we don't have it at our resort either.
I just find it a little hard to believe. I mean, I believe you in a sense, but I find it a little hard to believe that there aren't facilities similar to yours that are competitors that have housing nearby where the allowed decibel level during the day and evening is lower than what we're proposing. And if they're going out of business as a result and losing millions of dollars, I guess I'd like to be educated about that. But I'm just finding this whole thing a little hard to understand.
So all I can tell you is the largest wedding event person that I know is the Secret Garden in Phoenix, Arizona. They do 125 weddings a year. It's 80 decibels until 10 o'clock at night. And then they either take it indoors or they ratchet it down or have to get a special use permit. I would support that 100%. That's being a good neighbor. But it's going to go beyond this. It's going to go to the discretion of MCSO. The tighter you bring that number, the more calls you're going to bring to MCSO. So 80 decibels, City of Phoenix, that's where the vast majority of our resorts are. Scottsdale, and you'd have to talk to the sound specialist, I understand, has a separate measure for its resorts, allowing them to go higher. And your large resorts that we compete against do have big indoor ballrooms. And we're okay with the 10 o'clock. Nobody should be here hearing this music till midnight or 11:30. I think that's crazy.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the additional information.
Mike Dickerson, followed by John Kirkheide.
Mike Dickerson with MD Acoustics, Gilbert, Arizona. Mayor, council members. Everything that Bill has just mentioned about tightening down the ordinance obviously has an implication on all businesses, not just Copperwind, but on all businesses and their ability to promote, whether it's events, special events. Obviously with some action to the time limits will obviously have an impact in terms of business. Just to put it into perspective a little bit more, conversation at 3 feet away is 60 decibels. Clapping of hands will exceed 70 decibels. So I just want to put that in perspective to Copperwind. If you've got a tennis court where there's onlookers 30 feet away clapping their hands, they have the potential to exceed a 70 decibel ordinance. And especially if you have several out there. That would have an impact for future events there, so anything like that. Other resorts do get away with certain, probably exceedances to the ordinance, and how do they do that? Probably strategic planning in terms of the layout of the resort. They may not have tennis courts right next to residencies. They may have outdoor events in other areas. Regardless of how the layout is, I'm just saying that it has that implication and in that impact to business. Copperwind definitely would support, and I would support a 70 decibel at the property line and 50 dB inside.
All right, thank you, Mike. You have a question for Mike? Okay.
Something doesn't compute for me because we had staff go out with a meter and measure a number of different locations, including Copperwind. And as I recall, the only one that exceeded, even reached 70, maybe went higher, was traffic. And so I guess I'm trying to understand how clapping can be over 70.
It's all relative to distance from the source. So for example, if you are 30 feet, if you've got, let's say 20 people clapping 30 feet away from you, there's the potential to have that exceedance of 70 decibels. If they're 500 feet away from you, more than likely you're not going to hear it. So for the measurements that were taken throughout the town, and I took measurements during special events at Copperwind, there were several instances where they were below 50 decibels at the property line during an event. There's times when it goes 57. And then there's times when you're next to the source and like the law firm had showed, hey, we can make it really loud when you're 10 feet away from everybody and it's 85 decibels or whatever. It's all relative to the distance. So when you set it at a structure or you set it at inside the building and you take a meter and you take the reading, what it does is it says, here's what the noise level is inside the building or here's what the noise level at the property line is. When you're at a property line, just to take into consideration that you're going to be measuring not just whatever the source is, but let's say, and I'm going to use Copperwind for this example, let's say that there's a landscaper who's landscaping the neighbor next door simultaneously as an event is going on. Now you're measuring not just the landscaper noise, but you're measuring Copperwind event noise. And at the same time, MCSO is flying a helicopter overhead. Now you're measuring helicopter noise. You start measuring all these sources. When you go out and measure noise, it's a compilation of several noise sources. Hence, a 2-point system, which was originally proposed, made sense because you can measure it at the source and you can measure it at the receiver. But now that we've changed to this, it makes sense as well to have it at the property line and set the limit, and inside and have a limit as well. Those are two instances that I would support as a consultant, as a sound expert, and it would make sense to set the levels that have been stated.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Do we have any other speakers? Are you satisfied with that answer? Are you okay with that? Yeah, we're okay with that.
John Kirkcaldy, and then the last speaker is Dory Woodrick.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is John Kirkcaldy. I'm a part-time resident of Fountain Hills, full-time resident of Arizona. You know, I am a resident of Copperwind, but I'm well down the hill from the resort. I'm really personally not concerned that their noise is going to affect me. I'm so far away. What I am concerned about, because I had a very bad experience with it, was Sunridge Canyon. Fortunately, the owners changed. I don't have a problem anymore. But a few years ago, they put me through a living hell because they'd have weddings. And, you know, you hate to call on somebody's wedding, but tomorrow night there's another one. Next weekend there's 2 more. So I want to make a point tonight. The ordinance as proposed would still be the loudest of any community surrounding us. The numbers that were quoted for the December 1st meeting in the packet were 70 decibels for Phoenix, 70 decibels for Tempe, 68 for Scottsdale, and 56 for Paradise Valley. I dug into each of those ordinances very deeply. Phoenix is strictly for handheld devices. It's directed at push carts and everything else. They really use more of a reasonableness standard for everything else. So it's really not applicable for comparison to residential areas. Tempe, 70 decibels is correct if you're talking about their industrial areas. 55 is what it is for residential areas. And in the case of an overlap, the lower number applies. Scottsdale gets really interesting. The 68 decibels is for establishments that serve alcohol or have live entertainment. There's a second noise ordinance in Scottsdale that applies to Western theme parks, of all things, and that's 55 decibels, I believe, at the property line for residential areas around that theme park. The point I'm making is, if you look at the comparatives, you're looking at, for residential areas, Tempe 55, Paradise Valley 56, Phoenix not applicable, and the Scottsdale is 55 to 68. So I really encourage you to think about lowering that 70. I appreciate Councilman Magazine's recommendation taking it down to 65. Really, to be comparable with everybody else would be 55 to 60 range for residential areas. A couple quick comments on Bill's comments about Copperwind. First of all, Bill bought a resort in a residential area. He then clear-cut most of the vegetation that would absorb sound, and he comes and says that something's in the CCNRs that restricts the residents from speaking out about noise ordinances. There isn't anything in the CCNRs directly. There is an ancillary document that's tied into the CCNRs. I don't know how many of you have read your CCNRs. Most people don't. Even those who read the CCNRs probably don't read the ancillary documents. And Bill is mischaracterizing the clause that's in there. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dory?
Again, Council, Mayor. I guess I'm in front of you from a lot of different standpoints, including my work with the Leadership Academy, the young people in the community, the revenue sourcing. I mean, we have a significant business here who, and businesses, but this one in particular, that stands to be significantly impacted. And I've got a lot of history with this property, like the day the first rock was ever turned on it. I sold every one of the condominiums the first time around, or my sales team did. And I worked with the developer for many years in the development of it and in the operation of it. And it's never been a property that's been easy to make a profit on. And for us to further limit this individual, this business, just does not seem appropriate. Staff has come up with a good ordinance. I know a lot about trucks, and I understand where you're coming from, and you're absolutely dead on. And this is something that we can all get behind, and we can continue to have a community where people can have a fun evening and a good time. These folks, when they bought these homes, they were buying at a resort. I recently bought a home in Lakeside Village. Didn't necessarily anticipate the level of emergency vehicles I was going to hear all the time, but that's just life. That's what happens when you have people moving into a community. There will be sounds. And in this particular case, this is all about some people trying to limit something that was there all along. The vegetation, that vegetation grew up there. When it started, those trees were about this big around, and they grew to a point that they had to be trimmed back. Let's be reasonable. Let's give these businesses an opportunity to make a good profit, or any profit, and to support our community with it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Let me find out where we are. We're still on 21. Further council discussion, or I'll entertain a motion. Councilman Magazine.
Yeah, I'd like to ask staff a question. Bob.
Bob, please.
Dory said, people should be able to have a fun evening, a good time, and so on. Couldn't agree more. Staff went out and took decibel levels in a variety of areas.
MCSO did, yes.
MCSO. Well, we don't have that in front of us, I don't think.
You do.
We do?
Mm-hmm.
It's in front of you. Could you go through some of that for us? Because I don't recall it by memory, but I thought I recalled that the only real problem was with traffic and maybe one other thing that,
We took readings.
Would be exempt.
Mayor and Councilman Magazine, we took readings at one of the weddings at Copperwind. It was well below 70 that night, that wedding. We took readings at Grapables the same evening. That was a little bit louder, but that was under 70. But that was, like the sound expert said, it depends how far you are away from the source. Then we went out during the day, and we did take several measurements from traffic. For example, Palisades and Hampstead. At the school bell, it registered 67 decibels, 67.2. When there was no traffic or low traffic, 47.3 decibels. With heavy traffic, it hit 70.3. And most of the other readings, and I can go down them if you'd like, most of them are traffic that go in the low 40s up to the 70s.
What about the non-traffic?
Well, the non-traffic is what I told you from the Copperwind and Grapables. The day we went out and did these, the rest were traffic during daytime hours, not nighttime.
And traffic would, as I understand it, be exempt. Is that correct? Bob, traffic would be exempt?
From the town ordinance.
I don't believe traffic is in one of the exemptions.
So if we have a traffic jam and people are hitting their brakes and everything, you telling me that people can get on their cell phones and call MCSO and complain about the traffic?
They could. It's not something we would respond to.
I would hope not. I would hope not. And I guess I don't understand why that isn't an exemption. But if it were an exemption, I hear you.
Well, let me take that back. The truck issue, the Jake braking, Now that, and I agree with the exemption that Councilman Brown brought up, but so, for example, when they were moving the dirt from Fire Rock, we got a lot of calls for that, and we did respond to that. So that would be an example of when we would respond to loud traffic.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not going to belabor this. I'll simply say that I think, if possible, if legal, any traffic should be exempt, I think. And I think what I've been hearing a lot of this evening is a fair amount of exaggeration about the negative impact on businesses. I'm concerned about the businesses, but I'm also concerned about the residents. So, I don't know.
I do think that the owner of Copperwind brought up a good point. The tennis courts, because they're going to have a big tournament there, that's very close to those condos, and it's going to be loud. People clapping and cheering in support. I don't know that it's going to go late at night, but that's going to be a loud event.
But we've also talked several times about discretion.
Absolutely.
And I don't think if there's a tennis tournament and there's loud clapping and somebody complains, you're going to go out and shut the place down. And so as long as there's discretion in this, I just don't see the problem.
I don't either, because I think the tennis tournament would probably be an exemption, a special event. And so you're right. We're not going to shut that down. And discretion, it's a community problem. I can't remember her name, but she brought up, it's give and take. There's got to be give and take on both sides. There has to be.
So let me just conclude by saying, if council wants to go with 70, fine, I'll go with 70. As I indicated, based upon the monitoring we've done, I think it's really more of an optics issue, that we would have one of the highest in the valley.
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Yates.
If I may remind everybody, I'm a big on the market, will tell you. 80, 85 decibels at the source is starting where OSHA even says it's getting too loud, you need ear protection. No restaurant, bar, wedding is going to put it anything too much over 80, 85, just because the people who are at the event are going to say this is obnoxious. And that's kind of what the starting gauge is. And to Dory's point, every economic development plan, even the one that Dana just reported today, we're talking about whatever we can do, and I'm paraphrasing, whatever we can do to help our businesses thrive. And they use the word, on top of sustainability, but vibrant and things of that nature. 80, 85 at the source, it really isn't that loud. And if everyone remembers the chart that we received, and these were from some other sound engineers, 70 at your home is, I think it was the equivalent to dial tone of your phone up to your ear. I mean, there's so many other examples. 70 is not that loud, but I believe in the market. I believe in the discretion, and I think we should probably add that if we want to somewhere in this. But for the most part, I'm very content with what staff has come up with, and I believe whether it be the Alamo or Copperwind, that at some point they're going to say, you know what, we're driving our customers away if we're too loud. Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Just to quickly say it's not for you. You can sit down here. So I was actually, I got to witness this last weekend. My wife and I actually got invited to a party, right? We got to leave the house with our young kids, and the police came because it was noisy. And I was excited to be there. I was, because they had the lights on and everything. And I'll tell you how it all went down. There was a great deal of discretion there, and it was based on more community policing, good neighbor idea. They very quickly turned the music down. And to appease the neighbors. I have no idea what time it was. It was clearly loud. No one talked about decibels. They just talked about being a good neighbor, which is a lot of what I heard today. And it seems like where we ended up in this particular policy is our compromise, right? And I'm gonna end this with a motion if you let me, unless there's other people to talk.
We have one on the floor, don't we?
Oh, do we?
No, we don't. Not yet.
That I really feel like, this policy is great, so we have something to fall back on. But for the most part, we're just being good neighbors already, and this is already happening. I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure if there was a noise complaint and someone went to the Copperwind and said this is a little much, they'd probably just turn it down a little bit. That's just what good people do, and I feel like we're surrounded by that. and maybe I'm naively optimistic, but I watched it all take place, lights and sirens and everything. And the cop never came back because they turned down the music, and it's not like they had to go get the neighbor and invite him over for Jell-O shots to butter him up. They were fine with it. So if possible, may I end with a motion unless there's more?
You can, then we'll go to one more speaker. But go ahead, you can make your motion.
I'd like to move to approve ordinance 16-10, noise-related amendments to section 11-1-7 of the town as presented.
Okay, does this include the breaking?
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, because the prior one amended the public record, it is the amended version.
Okay. And a second?
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Do I have a second?
I wanted to amend the motion.
Okay, I have a second. How do you want to amend it?
To add discretion, MCSO discretion.
Mayor, if I may, isn't that just our policy to begin with from a code enforcement perspective? The first time we go out, we don't ticket. I think we talked about that in our
Let's just
last.
I'll
leave it
rescind
like
my
that.
amendment.
It was a nice amendment, though.
Before we have, no, it's not.
A little redundant, but it's nice.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, but I have a late speaker card, and it's Bo. Where are you? So come on out.
We didn't wake you up, Bo, did we, being so noisy down here?
I'm Bo James. I live on Sunridge Drive. I live on the house closest to Copperwind that's on Sunridge Drive. And not too long ago, the three homes that are on Rhodes Court, and the residents of the three homes on Rhodes Court, and my wife and I were at the home on Rhodes Court that's closest to Copperwind, and we were talking about the noise ordinance. And all four of our families say, we have no complaint with Copperwind. We think sometimes a little louder than we might like, but we think that everybody has a right to enjoy themselves one time in their life at a wedding, and would like those weddings to be at Copperwind, and so we love hearing the music come from Copperwind for weddings because we know we got another happy couple, and it's good for the community. That's all I got to say. But we are the four closest homes in Sunridge Canyon to Copperwind.
Thank you. All right, I have a motion. Did you have anything else? I have a
I'll wait
motion.
for discussion after
Okay,
your motion.
I have a
right?
motion and a second. Discussion on the amendment? Discussion on the motion, sorry. I'm tired.
I would like to say a couple of things. First of all, Mayor, or Councilman Nick, you were at one of the parties out of the 4 calls, so congratulations. That is
Made
commendable.
history. Made history.
And I think you're the youngest councilman, so that makes sense. I want to just reference back to my comments 2 weeks ago when I had said that I feel that we're almost to the point now where so much time has been invested with the town staff that is fantastic, great job working on this so hard. We had 4 calls. We've had a Chicago police officer, we've had other police officers that have identified issues and challenges with enforcement on this. I really don't want our officers to turn into sound police that have to use a device that now the residents will rely on that device for enforcement action. I would rather have, as Councilman Nick indicated, Councilman DePorter, a little bit more of a community effort to work and communicate with your neighbor. The gentleman that came up and talked about the bar in town, I would love to know whether or not they had a communication with the bar and whether or not that was addressed. I think that would be a good idea to address it. And now we're in a position where I think everyone feels they have to make this motion and they have to move this forward. And honestly, I don't think we have to do anything. So I'm against this noise ordinance as it stands right now. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, one quick clarification just for one of our earlier speakers' benefit. The packet that went out with the original agenda included an amended item that you all received earlier today. that probably addresses at least one of the concerns that was raised about special events. We made sure to clear up the confusion that there was between Section 203 of the zoning ordinance, which is a temporary use permit, which is the administratively issued permits that Bob handles, and special event, which is the Great Fair and much larger events that we have in town. So that change was made, and I personally believe that the definition of dwelling unit will include the patio and balcony areas, so we'll actually cover that as well. But that's just two of the issues that came up earlier that are different from what you had in your packet. I want to raise that question.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
You say nay.
I say
Nay.
aye. I'm opposed. Aye. Aye.
Newbie.
So 6-1. 6-1.
No, that was 7.
Nay.
All right.
Was that over 80 decibels? Nay.
Nay sounds more negative. No.
Right.
Okay. We're getting there. All right, we're on number 22, and 22 and 23, there'll be one report, and speaker cards will be taken during number 22 only. Open the public hearing to receive comments on ordinance 16-08, amending the Town of Fountain Hills zoning ordinance, Chapter 5, Section 519, and Chapter 18, Section 1806, by revising provisions related to noise violations. Any other council discussion? Any speaker cards? Okay. Now close the public hearing. Consideration of ordinance 16-08 as just presented. Any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, so moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Okay, update from the town manager on the Fountain Lake water quality.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, you recall back in September, we had a work session on this topic, and some progress has been made. I do want to note that in the in your packet, in the staff report, there is a change. There had been an error in the anticipated completion date of July 30th. We were actually, we were trying to do a 3-month difference between that, between the time that the project would get completed. And so it's really going to be, I believe at this point, no later than June 12th. Of course, all this has to do with the contractor. We have what's being passed out right now is a timeline on this project, and also attached to that is the request for proposal. And this is just the cover sheet. It's actually, I believe, like a 20-page document. But we're in the process of getting this ready to release on December 28th, where we'll advertise December 28th, and also we'll advertise on January 4th. This is obviously the direction the council gave us at the council workshop. They wanted us to proceed the aerators for the lake. This is money that we already have budgeted in the capital improvement program to actually fund this. And the other issues, or I should say the other capital improvement expenses that were identified at that workshop, we have put those into the later years of the capital improvement program. And so those are the variable frequency drive system, which is estimated at $825,000, the water storage system with an estimated cost of $1.5 million, and then a new control system, which actually we could do the new control system, as I understand it from Mark, sooner than 2 years out. We could actually do that much sooner. It's late, I apologize doing this at the end of the meeting.
I think we have a question from
Sure.
Councilman Yates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know this goes without saying, but moving forward, most of our RFPs, unless otherwise directed by council, are lowest qualified bidder.
That's correct. What we're going to do, though, on this is, as part of the RFP process, we'll have a qualifying portion of it, which will get to those that are qualified to do this project. They will be evaluated based on their expertise and doing similar types of projects, as well as there's a whole host of different items that they'll be scored on with this. So we started working on this immediately after the council workshop. In fact, Dr. Mafi with the firm that actually advises us and works with us actually helped further define and come up with the specifications for the aerators. And we started moving forward with the attorney's office to try to get this RFP done. We initially were going to do an invitation for bid, but because there's going to be a somewhat of a small design that would be required of the successful company, we have to make sure that they're understanding the scope and scale of the project. So that was something that we changed it to be an RFP rather than an invitation for bid. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have. Mark is here as well, who can answer any questions.
My only other comment would be the fact, and that's tremendous that we could potentially get this done before it gets too hot, but if everyone remembers last year, it started getting a little ripe.
In April, actually.
Yeah.
In April.
We do have a plan for that. In fact, we're going to be proactive this year, and we're actually going to start running the fountain much like we did after we had the complaints. But we're going to get ahead of that this year, and we're also going to do the chemical treatment much earlier. The good news is all of you are familiar with SRP, and they have had some rate reductions, and we will also benefit from that. And that's a long period of time that will be during this transition before we have the aerators up and done. So in any case, we would have liked to have had this done sooner, obviously, but I do believe that the interim plan that we have to manage the odors, as well as having this done by no later than the end of June, I think will be right on target.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, along the lines of what Councilman Yates just mentioned, I just asked the question, is there any way of expediting this schedule? Because I agree 100%. I mean, our anticipated completion is June 19th. That thing starts stinking up around May and into June. And then we're going to be putting aerators in, and then we're not really going to know the effect of the aerators because we're dealing with, we're being reactive rather than proactive. So looking at your schedule here, I don't want to, turn things on its head. If there's any wiggle room in here in terms of compressing this schedule so we can have an earlier anticipated completion date, I just think that would be advantage from a variety of reasons, because once again, we're being proactive rather than reactive, and we may save some cost on the front end in terms of having to over-chemicalize, I'm not sure that's even a word, the lake itself. So I'll leave that to you guys to
It's a
see.
good question. We gave you the worst case on the completion date. There is a lead time on the ordering of the aeration system, but we originally, and I'm not knocking anything, but originally you recall this was something we tried to address back in May of earlier this year, and we just were not able to get to it due to the council scheduling to get this on. But it's one of those situations where we believe that it will take about 6 months from the time we get started before it's all completed. So
I understand that. I'm just suggesting if you can just,
we'll do what we can
take a
to do
close
that.
look at this, see if there's any areas where you can compress it.
Our biggest concern is over-promising and under-delivering, because that sometimes happens to us, but we'll do what we can, Councilmember Alicia.
We never do that, do we?
We heard you loud and clear, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, our last, let's see, we'll go on to council's discussion direction to the town manager. We have one item listed at the request of Councilman Magazine, the topic of directing staff to analyze the impact of a recent court case regarding the Arizona Public Safety Pension Plan as it relates to the town's MCSO contract has been placed on the agenda for the purpose of discussion of placing this topic on a future agenda for discussion and possible action. Grady, did you want to explain that?
Yes. You recall at the last meeting, Councilmember Magazine asked to try to bring this up during the discussion. I had told him that he could just bring that up during the discussion, and then I was reminded by both the attorney and the clerk that these items that appear here have to actually be placed on the agenda, and so I felt bad, and I apologized to Alan. And then once we got this on here, I was told, well, then it's going to take council members basically to agree whether or not this is something that the council wants to do. And I had to go back and apologize to Alan. I have not had this happen. So there's like 2 times in a row that Alan's wanted to have this discussed and wanted to bring up. This is a serious situation, though, and that is involving this court case relating to the pensions. And there is going to be some impact. We just don't know at this point, but the staff is on it, and we'll do some analysis on this, regardless of your request to do that.
I think this is called bureaucracy run amok.
Okay, so we're good with that? Okay.
So where are we?
That he's going to do it. That's basically what it is. Yes.
All right, so
It's a yes.
You're going to come back with information.
We will come back.
Yes.
All of that.
Okay, requests, activities, I got a couple of things I got to say, and you got something?
I have one that kind of falls under directing staff to conduct further research, just as a point that I meant to make under the noise.
So it was already on the agenda?
About noise,
Okay,
right.
so it was agendized, so we can talk about it, okay?
I would, it's real quick, it's just along the, how many decibel meters did we say we're gonna buy? Was it 2 or 1? Can we just buy 1? Because of the lack of numbers of complaints and just, the town's not so huge that there's not 5 in a night at the same time.
I would love to just have one, but things happen, and when something might be out of order or it's out for repairs, and that's when you need to go in and do a reading. So I think it's just best to have 2, just for backup. But I hear where you're coming from.
What do they cost again, each one?
We think, we went back and researched, and we think we can buy 2 considerably less. Do you remember, was it less under 5 now? Yes. For 2, considerably less under 5 for the 2. And again,
5,000 for 2,
yes.
compared to 15,000 the last conversation.
Well, they go up, as they've got Cadillacs just like they have for anything, so.
Depending on who's talking about. Okay, all right, real quick, okay? We had a lot of events, so I just want to cover this. Candy Cane Carnival at the Community Center. I want to thank Heather Ware, Ken Burling and his engineers, the staff, and all the volunteer elves for making this year's event a big success. If you missed the event, you can still stop by to see the trains. Check the town website for the days and hours it will be operating. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for again bringing us the Stroll in the Glow. Beautiful lighting on the avenue was brought to you by the town. Thank you to the fire department for bringing Santa to the avenue to find out what all those kids want for Christmas. Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day was very moving and solemn ceremony. Thank you to all the veterans groups for hosting this at our memorial at Fountain Park. The flyover was an awesome part of the event. We had a couple of ribbon cuttings. The first was the 4th anniversary of Senor Taco, the restaurant located on Fountain Hills Boulevard. The other Senor Taco on Shea has been here for 8 years. We wish Juan continued prosperity for both of his restaurants. 3 other ribbon cuttings, All's House Home Watch Service, Fountain Hills Barber Shop, and Mods for Rods. We thank them for choosing Fountain Hills and wish them all the best success with their businesses. And last, on behalf of the Town Council, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays to all, and motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in second? I need a motion
So
first.
moved.
All in favor? And I'm sure nobody's opposed.